And next on Weather Underground, special extended coverage for you as danger storms once again target the south. We are breaking down the timing for you and the locations that are at risk as we track severe thunderstorms with damaging winds, big hail, and tornadoes all likely.
We are also closely watching Florida for the second day in a row. See where strong and potentially severe thunderstorms are battering central portions of the state and when the threat is shifting even farther south. Plus, another weekend and another weekend storm system to track. Find out who's in the bullseye for more heavy rain and rumbles of thunder through Sunday.
And our countdown to hurricane season continues for you. Tonight, hurricane expert Dr. Rick Knapp explains how and when evacuations are called by local and state officials. Important information you need next on Weather Underground. And we thank you for joining us tonight for a Friday edition of Weather Underground. So glad you could be with us. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis.
Tonight's big severe threat, the same area we've been following with deadly and destructive tornadoes through this week. For example, who could forget the images that we saw out of Medill, Oklahoma? Unbelievable strong storm that formed right in front of our eyes a couple of days ago. Unfortunately, at least one person was killed here from the tornado, which has a preliminary rating of EF2. And, you know, jaw-dropping images here with that condensation funnel lowering from the cloud and the destruction happening on the ground here with both water pouring out of this building and then that red dust. That contrast really quite amazing when you see just how close this camera was to all of that flying around. Unfortunately, here we go again with another day in the center of the country with severe weather. It looks like eastern Oklahoma, eventually getting into northeast Texas, Arkansas, and northern Louisiana, all included in a severe weather threat. And the atmosphere is already kind of bubbling up. We can show you that on the visible satellite imagery with basically the storms that are starting up in Kansas and extreme northern Oklahoma. You can see they have a different texture to them, a little bit more of a cauliflower top there in the last couple of frames. Those are the updrafts really going. That cap is done. The other thing to note on this visible imagery, this is really high-res stuff. We're getting lots of images in compared to even the normal satellite. If you look at the low-level clouds, they're going this way, while the upper-level clouds are going that way. That is a lot of spin in the environment. And it's really this corridor that has an enhancement to that spin, that different wind direction with height, which will lead to some big storms later on today, coming off of this kind of triple point area where the area of low pressure and our warm front collide with the storms that will then be dropping down from the area near the other area of low pressure. Let's start with the severe thunderstorm potential. Near the Tulsa area, there's a severe thunderstorm watch that goes until 11 o'clock. And we already have at least one severe thunderstorm warning on the Kansas side here. There was a little bit of rotation with this. Not a great signature for rotation anymore, but still a severe thunderstorm warning for some very gusty straight line winds arcing up towards the north like this. That severe thunderstorm warning goes for portions of Montgomery County, Wilson County, Elk County here goes until 4:30. Now, again, there was a little bit of rotation on that back edge of the comma. I think that's loosened up a bit, but there's still an indicator of very strong straight line winds bending towards the north. Should go towards the north side of Independence. Not that it'll be any picnic in Independence itself with some strong winds coming on through. We look south now onto the Oklahoma side. Here's Tulsa, and the National Weather Service radar site is right here on the corner of the screen. You're seeing some big storms off to the north of Tulsa, not warned on yet, but some indicators that the hail core there is still pretty impressive. So we zoom out, give you the big picture here with this kind of storm pattern. And one thing to note here with the low-level winds, notice we have this kind of extra zone of wind, eastern Oklahoma and northeast Texas. Not only is that going to help to funnel in some favorable environments with that stronger wind just off the deck, but it will also contribute to our tornado threat as we go into tonight. That zone of severe weather plastered here, but look at the fine details. You look at the low-level winds, again, coming almost due south to north in that northeast Texas into Arkansas and Oklahoma area. You go about 5,000 feet up and look at that turn. I think that will eventually help to give us at least a couple of rotating storms, Mike, and that's what we're really concerned about through the next several hours.
Definitely. Some of those threats could go past dark tonight, so it's going to be a particularly dangerous night for a lot of people. Just be aware of that threat. Mark, thanks so much for that. We know that storms likely to come back in this weekend. You wouldn't know it by the looks of the skies in Nashville or in Raleigh. Beautiful days. Nashville so comfortable at 70 degrees. Raleigh, actually, a warm day for us. Puffy, fair weather, cumulus clouds. We're 80 degrees right now. Now, both of these places have storms rolling in this weekend. Let's start with tomorrow's forecast. There's an area that's highlighted in red that's likely to see at least a chance for some severe weather. That'll include the Tennessee Valley over through the Carolinas and then nudging its way up into the Ohio Valley as well. So yes, Nashville, we're kind of right in the heart of that. Knoxville will be in that as well. This is a look at the future radar. You can clearly see how the low spins its way through here. And then along the eastern periphery of that or the southern periphery of that, that's where you have the most instability in the atmosphere. That's where the storms really get firing through the afternoon and evening tomorrow. That certainly will include East Tennessee, East Kentucky, then rolling your way into the Carolinas and Virginia. But notice how much rain there's likely to be up across the Ohio Valley, and so we've got flood risks for you as well. So looking at a place like Paducah, Louisville, Lexington, Indianapolis, Columbus, these are all places where flooding could be an issue for you. Definitely Nashville, we've got opportunities for stormy weather that could produce some, at times, heavy rainfall rates and opportunities for some flooding. Again, there's a look at the timing for us. As we go Sunday now and pushing it into the mid-Atlantic, and we could have some stormy weather, around D.C. or Baltimore, Philadelphia, then out toward the Jersey Shore. But plenty of rain rolls its way into the Northeast going into Sunday, and there actually might be enough cold air for some late season snow to mix in there as well. Mostly elevation dependent here, interior Northeast, away from the water, but there could be some spots here where you get a solid amount of snow. Here's a look at how much we're anticipating as far as rain goes. There'll be numerous places where 1 to 2 inches of rain is going to be pretty commonplace for us. And then there's some of that blue and even purple painted on the map there where highest elevations could see 8 inches to a foot of snow across the Northeast. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but certainly keep in mind large area of rain and flooding is definitely possible. Again, there's a look at some of the highest elevations getting in on some of the 8 to 12 inches of snow. Hard to believe we're going into the last week of April. We're still talking snow there, but we'll see how this pans out. Heavy, wet snow, and usually it melts pretty quick this time of year as well. The other story following on the East Coast is what's happening down in Florida. Dr. Neb covering that for us. Dr. Neb, been a pretty rough day, especially central Florida, but another incredibly warm day and unstable day in Florida.
Yeah, last night and early this morning, really busy in the northern half of Florida. Last night, Tallahassee had a tornado on the north side. Panama City, oh my goodness, look at what they've been dealing with over the last 24 hours. This is extremely heavy rain. Now, this is not your afternoon thunderstorm kind of convection. This is brought out by the frontal system that's moving its way into Florida. And a lot of really strong winds, some vicious lightning, a lot of tornado warnings in the Florida Panhandle last night. And there were multiple rounds of it. So a little bit of damage here and there. And there are a lot of trees in the Florida Panhandle, which make it very vulnerable to damage from severe thunderstorms, even without a tornado. Now, most of that activity has moved south, and later on tonight, I would say southwest Florida, probably the greatest chance for the strongest storms that could be severe at times, mostly a strong wind threat, maybe some hail, and there's always a slight chance of a quick spin up of a tornado. And, it's Central Florida that's got rain-cooled weather right now, 70 rain-cooled degrees in Tampa. Jacksonville, it's gotten more pleasant behind the weather, but 92 degrees still in Miami, and you can see where the front is with the delineation in the moisture content, and with that 68 dew point in Miami. Ouch, the heat index is 96. So we have quite a difference in the air mass, and the battle is happening in the middle of the state. Here is the main energy going northeast, but it has laid down a front here over northern Florida, and we've got a little bit more upper level energy coming in off the Gulf of Mexico. So see those storms popping there ahead of the front with that added energy over the Gulf. So we've got more coming in, and that's why I think southwest Florida could be getting most of it. Now, early this morning, there was a pretty decent squall line that came through the I-4 corridor right in there. You can see in the 6, 7, 8 o'clock hour time frame this morning, there were a lot of wind reports exceeding 40, 50, in some cases 60 miles an hour over a large stretch. But this hasn't happened recently. This was earlier in the morning. So now the strongest storms are offshore, right? And Sarasota, and eventually down to Fort Myers, and still one more round in Tampa. It's the West Coast that's going to be dealing with it. We still have some thunderstorms popping here and there farther east. Now, this model is a little bit behind on the initialization, but the overall sense of it is that I think overnight tonight we could have not only southwest Florida, but even the metro areas in southeast Florida could get some strong thunderstorms, helped out by that instability south of the front and that energy coming in. Probably wanes overnight with the heating of the day going away, and then maybe it reinvigorates in central Florida. You know, between Lake Okeechobee and I-4 would be the hot spot, and then that would maybe edge a little farther south. Palm Beach County by tomorrow evening could have some storms, and that's where the focus will be. So at least there's maybe a little bit of rain relief coming south, Mike, but overall, especially South Florida, way too hot. They can't get the fronts to come through. You sit in that southwesterly flow on the south side of the front. This is not the April in South Florida I was used to.
No. Gosh, if we could get some rain, that would be so helpful. It's been dry, and as you mentioned, it has been so hot. Like a place like Miami today, another record-setting day, got up to 95 degrees this afternoon. It's sitting at 92 right now, and you can see we have overcast skies. This morning, by the way, what was interesting about Miami, 82 degrees was the morning low, Dr. Knapp. I mean, that is ridiculous.
That's like July and August.
All-time warmest record low in April, but this heat wave that we've got going on this month has been oppressive.
Yeah, and I think at least part of it has to do with the overall pattern that has made for a vigorous atmosphere in the southern half of the continental U.S., but it's not bringing the fronts all the way through, so you have a very strong moist and unstable and warm air mass coming out of the south and southwest on the south side of the front. So it's making, when you get that southwest wind in South Florida this time of year, it can be very oppressive. Usually, the systems that go across in April, across the continental U.S., they bring a front into Florida, then it kind of fizzles out, and you get the trade winds and the high behind there. But we've just been sitting, right south of the front for weeks.
Yeah. It's amazing to look at some of the stats just for the month. Miami right now averaging 7 degrees above average for the month. That's a huge number. Fort Lauderdale averaging 5 degrees above average for the month. And you look at some of these cities here, all now trending their hottest April on record. And that has legitimate consequences.
It absolutely does. I mean, it's absolutely oppressive and uncomfortable. But the problem, Mike, is that because all the frontal systems farther north are taking in all the moisture and warmth and instability, you're not getting a lot of rain in southern Florida. So you're not helping out the drought a lot. And you only get a little bit of rain when the fronts come through, but then they fizzle out. And you don't get some dousing rain for days in Florida. We in Georgia to Texas have been stealing it all.
Yeah, the I-20 corridor seems like it has been the big winner as far as rain goes. Florida's been left out by and large. A lot of these places, the state of Florida, by the way, 26% of the state now in severe drought. And you can see the numbers here. There are significant deficits from the Panhandle to North Florida all the way down to the Keys. Truly, there are deficits right now. So, I know that you can speak more to this because you are a resident there. Our fire season is usually kind of wraps up about now, or it's, going into the summertime months. It's not nearly as prevalent, but I wonder if we may have an elongation of that, or we're now putting ourselves at risk for more fires.
Yeah, well, the dry season usually goes November to April or May. So we are well into the dry season, but this has been drier than usual, and the dryness goes all the way back to a very dry last September when it was supposed to be wet, but on the periphery of those hurricanes over the western Atlantic, Florida didn't get any rain then either. So Lake Okeechobee's way below average, so this is a drier than usual dry season.
Yeah, and you look at what's going on with the forecast. Going into the first week of May, it looks dry. It does not look any better. Dr. Knapp, excellent insight there. Mark, let's break down what's going on with the pattern here, because for a lot of folks, they're going to need some rain.
Yeah, where it's been soggy, unfortunately, it continues to be soggy, and it's April and then heading into May. When you get storms, they often are severe. So we want to go back into the center of the country, give you another look at what we are expecting to occur for the rest of tonight. Not only do we have the severe thunderstorm watch that goes until 11, we're waiting on another watch south of there that will likely be a tornado watch. Not a guarantee, but likely at this point that we will have a tornado watch on our hands. There's a lot of spin in the environment. Right now, there's one main storm that we're following on the north side of Tulsa that has a severe thunderstorm warning, 60-mile-per-hour winds, some small hail. This is a supercell, however. You see that kind of kidney bean shape on that lower corner of the storm. It's not a low enough rotation yet to suggest that we need a tornado warning, but there's certainly a spin here where the green colors are going towards the radar, red away, so it is a rotating supercell aloft anyway, probably not a component all the way down to the ground. On the south side of Tulsa, we're also starting to see storms popping through. That cap is broken. There is no more warm air aloft preventing storms, so now all these towers are going up together, and I think we're going to continue to see that line kind of unwrap as we go through the rest of the night. And it's really this area, once that storm path gets a little bit farther south, that has the best chance for rotation. So let's take a look at what the modeling is suggesting as to where those storms will go, saying that by 5 o'clock local time, we'll start to kind of unravel that atmosphere a little bit farther. Look what happens over the next few hours, though. That whole line could go with the southernmost storm, whether that's on the Oklahoma side, maybe down into northeast Texas somewhere, with basically an untapped environment in a rotating atmosphere. So, Mike, it's going to turn into a rain and wind event over time, but there is a tornado threat first.
All right, Doc. All right, thank you very much for that, Mark. When we come back here on Weather Underground, Dr. Knabb rejoins us with his countdown to hurricane season, including important information about how and when evacuations are mandated. Plus, are you driving on asphalt or concrete roads? We explain why it can make a big difference when it comes to flooding.
Check this out. This is what happens when over an inch of rain falls in less than an hour. This was around Wichita, Kansas this afternoon as the storms rolled through. That is too much water to be driving through. You never know how deep that is. You never know if the road is still there, especially if you're in that. What is that? The Batmobile meets a bike? Crazy. And probably not so dry, considering you're seeing the spray coming off the tires of the cars around you as well. This is just the beginning of the story. That heavy rain that came through the Wichita area is now creating some big storms in southeast Kansas and northern Oklahoma. You can see this on the visible imagery. There's going to be a line right through here that kind of unwraps as we go through the rest of the late afternoon and early evening hours. Pretty quick storm development within this area should lead to both severe thunderstorm warnings and potentially tornado warnings as well within the next, say, hour and a half or so. I think that risk will increase a little bit more. Severe thunderstorm watch in northeast Oklahoma, and that is also where we have our lone severe thunderstorm warning due north of Tulsa. This is a pretty big storm, hail core right in here, and so they're warning for that potential for 1-inch hail and 60-mile-per-hour winds. Osage and Washington counties, storms going just about due east, maybe a little bit north of due east. So Bartlesville, the storm's headed right towards you, and it is a supercell. We're starting to see a little bit more of that rotation on the south side of the storm. It's not a low enough rotation or a tight enough couplet to suggest tornado yet, but it is something we're watching. And then you go south of Tulsa, and again, that's that same line that the storms are starting to pop towards Okmulgee, and down the 75 corridor there, State Highway 75. As for what we're anticipating for the rest of the day, why I think there is this tornado threat, if you look at the low-level winds, they are almost all due south to north. There's a little bit of even a southeast to northwest component at the surface. You go at about 5,000 feet up, guys, and suddenly we're cutting across that zone quite dramatically. That kind of spin will lead to rotating storms. Dr. Knabb, while we're talking severe weather, the seasons are giving some hints that we're almost ready for the next one as well.
Yeah, the humans have decided that the East Pacific hurricane season starts on May 15th. Now, we have had preseason systems before, and in the northern part of the eastern Pacific off California and Baja California Peninsula, I see a bunch of ship tracks, so it doesn't look like anything doing there. Let's go a little farther south. What do we have here? Look at this guy. A lot of spin, a lot of thunderstorms for a preseason wannabe system. This is an Invest 90E, the first one of the year. Now, if this does become a tropical depression, it would be the earliest on record in the East Pacific Basin. Now, we only have satellites back a half century or so. Who knows if it happened before that? But as far as we know, this would be the earliest on record. It's over warm waters, greater than 80 degrees right now, but it is headed toward cooler water. So whatever this does, it's going to be a flash in the pan here over the weekend, and then it'll be gone. But such as it is, doesn't it warm your heart to see the tropical graphics back again. And at least I can say that because this is not going to be affecting land, although it has a high chance of becoming depression or storm in the next couple of days. It says 5 days here, but this is going to be over and done in a couple of days. So don't be worrying about it. But it would be academically and in the context of a climate issue, interesting. We've never had named storms in April on record, and the earliest was May 10th. So if this becomes a named storm, it would be the earliest on record, and if it does that, it would be named Amanda. So just reminds us that we have a hurricane season approaching even on the Atlantic side. And we've been talking about evacuations all week, and I wanted to briefly go over how is it that emergency managers call for evacuations. First, they look at the zones that they have prescribed already. These are already in place all the time. This is the Tampa Bay example. And then they get forecasts and storm surge warnings, storm surge graphics in briefings from the Hurricane Center. And then based on that decision support from the Hurricane Center, the emergency managers decide when they need to call one or more of their evacuation zones to be evacuating. And if everybody were to listen to those evacuation instructions and get out when told to do so, this whole thing would work wonderfully. And you might think, well, we've got storm surge warnings now. We got the new storm surge graphic from the Hurricane Center. Emergency managers can use that to call timely evacuations. Don't we have the storm surge and evacuation problem solved? No, because we don't get 100% compliance on evacuations. It's up to you if you are called to evacuate to get out. So I want to get a moment here to talk about what are the major impediments to evacuation. Underestimating storm surge. Even when people hear they're under a storm surge warning or are called to be evacuated, they don't necessarily think that really applies to them. They don't understand how life-threatening the hazard is. Don't underestimate storm surge. The only way to be sure you survive it is to get out, evacuate when told to do so. Pets can be a hindrance. You have to take them with you, so plan ahead for going to a shelter or a friend's home where you can take pets. Don't leave them behind, and don't fail to evacuate yourself and your pets because you don't have a place to take them. Cost can be an issue, so don't evacuate far. Just go to a friend's house as close by as possible, and don't let social distancing be a hindrance either, because the hurricane storm surge would be a much more immediate threat to your life. Mike? Mark?
Oh, that's very good advice there, Dr. Knabb. And again, compliance is the key here. Hey, we hope you can stick around. A lot more to come here on Weather Underground. When we come back, we are tracking storms for you not only tonight, but right into the weekend. Heavy rain, thunder. They could crash your weekend. We'll show you where. And we're, of course, watching the architects tonight and through eastern Oklahoma. We'll have the very latest on the warnings when we return. And welcome back, everyone, to Weather Underground. Tonight we'll be with you until 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central for extended coverage of severe storms. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis, joined by storm specialist Mark Elliott tonight. He is in the lab. Mark, you're particularly focused on that, say, eastern Oklahoma area, but that will not be the only place that'll be a hot spot tonight for storms.
Yeah, I think now that storms have begun in that kind of northern and eastern side of Oklahoma, they're going to unwrap down a line all the way into Texas, which will then translate into portions of Arkansas and Louisiana after dark tonight. There will be a building wind threat and heavy rain threat towards places like Little Rock and Shreveport, maybe Memphis as we go through the night. But before we get there, before we cluster these storms all together, first we have a hail and wind threat with the storms already on the north side of Tulsa. Then later this evening, I think we will build in a tornado threat in southeastern Oklahoma all the way into northeast Texas. Not impossible to get tornadoes tornadoes, mind you, in northeast Oklahoma in this severe thunderstorm watch area. There are some signs that there at least are modestly rotating thunderstorms already, tied to an area of low pressure up here, and so that's kicking off these storms and providing a little bit of that extra spin aloft in the atmosphere as well. Let's zoom in towards the Tulsa region. There's one main storm right now, but you can already see that we've got storms quickly developing well south of town along that same line. But the severe thunderstorm warning is here north of Tulsa, headed towards the Bartlesville area. Probably a pretty good shelf cloud developing on this just west or even just northwest of Bartlesville as those winds are approaching and the storm is kind of bowing its way towards Bartlesville. So get ready for some very gusty winds there, and quite honestly, probably a picturesque storm if you can avoid the severe weather component. I think one of the biggest risks out of this one is the hail. I'll switch this to the hail tracker, and you can see that that is our hail core working its way almost directly towards the Bartlesville area. And this will bend a little bit off to the north as we go because our low pressure is going to bend the storm in that direction, allow it to kind of lift north just a little bit. So 1-inch hail seems pretty likely with this, at least for some of you in that warning. It is a supercell. We'll take a look here at the rotation, and there's a little bit of that component of the green and the red right next to each other. Nothing tight, nothing really coming together, suggesting a low-level rotation and a tornado threat yet. But that could change even pretty soon with these storms that are quickly building on the south side. These towers are going up south of the Tulsa area near Okmulgee, headed towards that I-40 corridor, maybe Longtown. Before too much longer, we'll have those storms pushing towards you. So as we widen out the map, you can see that this is just the beginning, right? This line is really developing and unraveling here, and we're waiting for this part of the story to get going just a little bit later on this evening. I say that's a focal point because we have this inflow wind at the low levels of the atmosphere that will be kind of bringing up even more warmth and even more moisture, and that wind kind of focuses in the storm potential as we kind of converge the low level winds together. And then, you know, if you squeeze a bunch of wind together in the low levels, it has to go somewhere, and that provides a little bit of extra lift, some rising air. So we'll have some pretty fast development to our thunderstorms once they get going in that area, and it's why it's this zone right in here with the darkest red where it's the most likely to see severe weather. Now, some of that is going to be well after dark. The farther towards the east you go here, the more we'll switch over to a very gusty wind threat. But we're not there yet, Dr. Nab. I think before we get to that organized wind threat, there will be a few tornadoes tonight.
Yeah, here we go again, Mark. Like you've been saying, busy night. Stay with us. Coming up on Weather Underground, the threat of storms doesn't even end tonight. We show you where heavy rain and thunder could, well, crash your weekend. And we've got really busy radar down in Florida. Now, this is where severe thunderstorms are possible tonight. Main threats would be maybe large hail, maybe strong winds. We had gusty winds in the I-4 corridor this morning. Right now, Tampa, Sarasota, that's where you're getting the most lightning. No severe thunderstorm warnings at the moment, but there's a lot more looming offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. And then some of that stretches across to Vero Beach, Florida, and you've got some lightning going on right there. And as we look down to South Florida, it's possible overnight some of this could slide your way, but look at all of that lightning extending way out into the Gulf of Mexico from Tampa. Stay with us. We'll track these storms, and Mark Elliott will take you back to the plains.
Well, you got to check out these crazy intense storms that we had roll through western Alabama. Check this out. This happened yesterday. Now, this area has had to deal with severe storms the last 2 weeks in a row. Looks like we could still see some more storms in the weekend. What do you even see? The visibility is so poor. I mean, that is truly blinding rain right there. And oftentimes, we urge you just to stay off the roads when there's severe weather out there. All right, we know that storms are returning for us again, and we've got some tonight through the Arklatex, storms that come back in. Likely to include, it's going to be in Alabama. It's probably going to be in northern Alabama, like Huntsville, Atlanta up to Chattanooga and Nashville, then spreading into the Ohio Valley, and then across the mid-Atlantic, including through the Carolinas, and maybe even hitting toward the Hampton Roads area. That's for Saturday, okay? Watch how this progresses as we fast forward the future radar here. You'll see that the spin on the the future radar, and the storms that really start firing across East Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, and then rolling their way into the Carolinas here. But a decent amount of rain is going to come out of these storms as well, so flooding becomes just another component of this that we're worried about. You can see the excessive rainfall that's in the forecast here. So from a Paducah to a Columbus to a Charleston to a Nashville, these are all places that are going to be at risk for some stormy weather that could produce some isolated flooding. There's the timing for you going into Sunday now, pushing its way into D.C. and Baltimore, up toward Philly. The Jersey Shore gets a ton of rain, but I-95, probably Richmond north, ends up getting some storms, then rolling into the northeast, and maybe even some cold enough air to get some snow in there. I don't think the I-95 corridor gets any snow at all. In Boston, you'll just be a cold rain, and then for a lot of you, everything starts to wrap up by the time Monday evening rolls in. A good swath here of up to an inch of rain to fall for. Some places 1 to 2 is going to be very common. Isolated locations where 2 to 3 won't be out of the question for you here. Again, a concern for us for some isolated flooding. Just something to keep an eye on, especially if you've been wet of late. Let's break down that forecast for a location like Chicago. It's a cool start to your weekend. Look at the forecast here. Just 47 on Saturday with rain. Much better as we hop into Sunday, close to the average, and the sunshine always makes things better, Mark.
And flooding, of course, top of mind when you see scenes like this. Training thunderstorms, the kind that bring round after round of rain to the same spots, trigger flash flooding. And if you've ever underestimated the power of moving water before, this shows you why we always say turn around, don't drown. If there was water covering that entire crevasse, you wouldn't even know that the road wasn't there anymore in east central Ohio. It carved through in just a matter of hours. So we wanted to know, do the road materials make a difference when flash flooding like that occurs? So we called up Jim Mack, the Director of Market Development with Cemex, for some answers. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
So, Jim, let's go right into it. There's, roads made of cement. There's roads made of asphalt. Is there a difference when Mother Nature throws that much water at them?
Well, that's a great question. There is a difference in it. I do want to say that for the most part, both asphalt and concrete roadways can be made more resilient and flood resistant, but concrete, just by its very nature, is a little bit more naturally flood resistant, just by the stiffness of the system. And the other thing we have to think about when we talk about flooding of pavements is that we need to distinguish between washouts and what's called inundation. What you were just describing is washouts. That's where the running water comes along and washes out the underlying ground, it washes out the pavement, and both concrete and asphalt pavements are susceptible to that. Neither pavement performs very well in those applications.
Now, Jim,
the more silent killer is what we call inundation, and that's just the rising of the water. It's those big aerial shots you see where water is every place, and that covers many, many, many more roads than will be washed out. For example, in Nebraska last year when the Missouri River flooding was happening, there were about 1,500 miles of roadway underwater at one time, and so that just soaks the base and the ground and the material underneath the pavement, and that leads to long-term deterioration of a pavement that's not as stiff as other pavement types are, such as concrete.
And now, Jim, I lived in the Houston area for a long time, and a lot of concrete roads there, and it seems one of the main reasons is so much repetitive inundation. And my understanding is that after a flood, the asphalt roads can be damaged more by people getting right back on the road, whereas the concrete seems to be a little more resilient when the cars get back on the road. Is Houston a good example of that?
Houston is the example of that. You're absolutely right. Houston is a concrete city, and we've had several flood events. And it's the reason why is, and I need to go pavement geek on you for just a little bit, but the asphalt roadways, they're a flexible pavement. They're also called flexible, and they rely on the strength of the underlying materials to help carry the loads. When that gets wet, it gets weak. And so when I load the pavement right after during the rescue operations, emergency operations, even for a year after, it takes about a year for that ground to get strong again. And I'm damaging the pavement that whole time. Concrete carries a load. That's where the strength is in the concrete pavement. There's still base layers, but it's that rigid layer that carries the load and allows it to kind of bridge over all those soft spots.
Just incredible insight there. Jim Mack, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And there's still a lot more that we are going to be talking about on Weather Underground. We continue to track dangerous severe weather tonight, including a line of storms that will provide severe thunderstorm warnings in Oklahoma, as well as potentially tornado warnings as the night goes on. Well, this Saturday, make sure you're here for a special new episode of Heavy Rescue. It's an episode so wild it'll have you on the edge of your seat.
Let's make this happen.
This time on Heavy Rescue 401.
Watch it.
A tree-bound wreck.
Whoa, whoa. Stop.
Puts down roots.
Whoa. Everybody away from the tanker.
Steve and Sonny battle.
Go. We gotta go.
A rail line rollover.
Oh. Yeah, it's gonna roll.
And a load of carrots.
Holy mackerel.
Burns the crew from Chatham.
Whoa. What I was afraid of.
That is the all-new episode of Heavy Rescue, Saturday night at 9, 8 Central, right here on the Weather Channel. Dr. Knabb, we want to talk about this pattern that we've been in with all of the severe weather. Any relief next week?
Yes and no. We're going to have a little relief from the exact same pattern we've been having, but not necessarily relief from severe weather. It just might come at us in some places from a different direction, because we're going to have building ridging in the western United States. You can see that in the water vapor. That's why it's getting so warm in California right now. So what we have to watch for instead, remember the Easter Sunday system started down here and came straight across this way? Well, with that big ridge over the west, we got to watch for systems coming over the top of the ridge and getting into the middle of the country that way. And let's see what the models do. So the white lines, middle and upper level pattern, you can clearly see the European model depicting our ridge out west. But now we've got some disturbances out here over the East Pacific that are going to have to come over that ridge. So let's see what they do in the European model. When we get to Saturday, we've got a little troughing here, a little disturbance out here. And then watch what they do. When we get into Sunday, it's kind of hard to tell, but what's happening is the disturbance that's coming into Pacific Northwest, this troughing, watch what it does going over this ridge into early next week. See that little disturbance right there? And then by Tuesday, it's amplifying. All of a sudden, if you're not watching carefully, it can kind of sneak up on you. But by Tuesday, the European model is right. The pattern will be such that we've got an amplifying trough in the upper plains, and that should, ahead of it, develop a surface low. And the colors are lower level spin. And so here's where our frontal system will be developing, and that will bring the moisture and the instability up through the plains and up through the Mississippi River Valley, and maybe coming a little farther north than what we've seen. And then there'll be enough energy extending down to the south that even the Appalachians and the southeast could get back in on some of the weather before this moves out to the East Coast by the end of next week. So that's going to be the big system next week. Let's pick it up on the surface by watching our system over the weekend depart to the northeast. But by Tuesday, here comes that low in the frontal system in the middle of the country. Mike, the details are going to be a little different with this one than some of the systems we've been dealing with the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. This one's going to be progressive, right? So let's drill down day by day here and show you some more specifics here on what could pan out for us here. We're going to start on Tuesday, okay, because we think that's a day could be a rough day for us. But we've already had a tremendous number of tornadoes already this year. More than 500 tornadoes have touched down across this country. Mississippi leading the way, followed by Texas and Alabama. Now, Texas in particular, you could be a target beginning, say, maybe Tuesday or so, because, this time of year, even climatologically, that's the favored area across the southern plains and the mid-south. And it kind of migrates a little bit more away from the southeast. Let's just put it that way. All right, so let's start here on Tuesday. You can see the atmospheric ingredients coming together. Almost a classic springtime setup for us here. A lot of moisture pulled in ahead of the front. The southern plains in particular will be a target for high instability. That means storms will be off to the races. Once they initialize with that daytime heating, they can explode vertically very rapidly, and that can mean very intense thunderstorms with strong winds, hail, even tornadoes. And then watch the winds. The wind shear is going to be an issue for us as well. So it looks like a lot of different ingredients are favorable for storms to form as we go early next week. But they don't stop, say, on a Tuesday. They're going to last Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and maybe even Friday before that system completely clears us, but not necessarily the southeast being the biggest target, okay? There's Tuesday's map, scattered storms for us, especially, say, that I-35 corridor. And then, yes, the southeast could be a target again, but now spreading a little bit more northbound as well. So the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley, and then into the mid-Atlantic, and then eventually this will get into the northeast as well. As we go into Thursday, you'll see how a lot of the action shifts farther north now. So from maybe Indianapolis all the way to Boston, we'll have issues with showers and storms. Could go with the rain as far north as Maine, and then probably not clearing us until sometime late on Friday, but still there around the Great Lakes, Buffalo, over toward it in Albany, Boston once again, Hartford, we're in that. Even New York City, we could be, a big bullseye on us for some storms. But keep in mind, it's going to be a long slog with that one. It won't necessarily be one of these issues where it's in and out marks. So a couple of different targets for next week, but starting in the plains.
Absolutely. And we have one of those targets in the plains tonight. So coming up in the next hour of Weather Underground, we're going to have much more on our top story. We're tracking severe thunderstorms with damaging winds, big hail, and tornadoes. A brand new tornado watch has just been issued. Plus, what goes into the timing of a hurricane evacuation? Dr. Knapp explains what goes into this critical decision as we count down to the hurricane season.
Next on Weather Underground, extended coverage for you as we watch strong storms race across the south again. So this evening, breaking down the timing for you, show you the locations that are at greatest risk with the severe thunderstorms that could contain damaging winds, big hail, and tornadoes likely as well.
Plus, we're also closely watching Florida for the second day in a row. We'll show you where strong and potentially severe thunderstorms are battering down portions of the Sunshine State and when the threat is shifting even farther south. Plus, another weekend and another weekend storm system to track. Find out who's in the bullseye for more heavy rain and rumbles of thunder all the way through Sunday.
And our countdown to hurricane season continues, and tonight hurricane expert Dr. Rick Knapp explains how and when evacuations are called by local and state officials. It's important information you need next on Weather Underground. And we thank you so much for staying with us tonight here on Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettis.
And I'm Mark Elliott. And of course, we're following severe weather. That is tonight's top story in many of the same areas that we had deadly and destructive tornadoes earlier in the week. And we were covering it live for you right here on Weather Underground when all of this unfolded in front of our eyes in Medill, Oklahoma. At least one person was killed here from the tornado, which has a preliminary rating of an EF2. But just astounding structure on that with the condensation funnel lowering from that wall cloud and the just ferocity of those winds going right over this manufacturing building with some sort of water being sprayed, the red clay from behind the building also being, sucked into that debris cloud, and then all of the siding and roofing materials as well. And you get an even a better view of this tornado as it exits and moves on back away from that building. Just a crazy sight. And unfortunately, many of you could be dealing with stuff like that again tonight. Basically, right at sunset, we're anticipating even more tornadoes in southeast Oklahoma and maybe even into northeast Texas as time goes on. Here's the setup for you. A bit of a double-barreled area of low pressure. The farther north you go, the more rain there is right now. We've got widespread rain and thunderstorm coverage, very heavy precipitation, some embedded gusty winds. If you're out ahead of that a little bit, you add a hail component and a little bit more wind, so some severe thunderstorm warnings. But I'm worried about this. Notice all that instability. And this, the past couple of frames in Texas, we now have thunderstorm development in that unstable air. As those storms approach that warm front where we know we have a built-in wind shift, I think that could be a trigger for tornadoes. It's why we have a brand new tornado watch that has been issued, goes until midnight. So we've got a ways to go for this threat for northeast Texas into Arkansas, portions of Louisiana. North of there, the severe thunderstorm watch that had been issued earlier. This goes until 11 o'clock local time. And it is the only warning so far. It's in that severe thunderstorm side, north of the warm front, but still in plenty of unstable air. Some surface component, but certainly not as much as the storms that we're anticipating anticipating to develop off to the south. So let's start off with the warning. It's right along I-40. Severe thunderstorm warning, mostly for gusty winds, although there is some hail embedded within this, up to about an inch in diameter, winds to 60 or so for McIntosh and Muskogee counties. Again, going right down I-40. I guess the saving grace here is that although there are kind of two lobes of wind surging forward, the cell kind of splitting a little bit, most of that wind is going parallel to the road, so the high-profile vehicles don't have to be as concerned with this storm system. Not that it's any fun driving through a severe thunderstorm at any time, but if it were perpendicular to the highway, then you risk more of those rollover accidents that we saw the other day. Very little, if any, rotation with this storm. Again, not much of a surface component at this point. So let's drop down to the south. Here are those storms that basically fired out of nowhere. We got an old boundary right here. You can see that on the Doppler radar. That's that faint green line. In fact, let me loop this for you a couple of times. You can see how we had almost no development, and then as a little impulse came near that extra lift from that boundary, that's why we've got the storms developing where they are, and I think there's a chance that those will continue to develop. These are supercells, not perfectly developed yet, Mike, but they are rotating already, and I think that's a sign of what's to come within the next hour or so.
Yeah. The next couple of hours could really prove to be the time frame when these things really take off. Mark, thanks so much for that update. How about some storms that really got firing in Virginia? You got to check this out. This is a new video into the Weather Channel here. Ian in Virginia with the serious rain, serious wind, and you notice on the ground there, that's not snow, folks. That is hail. And for a lot of storms that we see tonight, hail will be a huge factor, and huge hail to go along with that, right? But let's go into tomorrow, because similar locations, you have Virginia, parts of Virginia, maybe Hampton Roads area could be at risk, but it's the Tennessee Valley and in Nashville, Huntsville, over toward Atlanta, Charlotte, could all be in locations where severe storms are possible for us tomorrow, and just something to keep an eye on if you plan on being outside. Watch the future radar and watch these storms flare up for us tomorrow, midday in particular, when we have maybe the most instability in the atmosphere and the storms can gen up here, but you can clearly see how the low spins across the Ohio Valley, and heavy rain also will be a very big issue for us, with opportunities for flooding to go along with the possibility of severe storms. This area in particular, highlighted in green, is going to really focus, I think, on Kentucky in particular and right along the Ohio River. These are areas that could flood from Paducah up toward Columbus, maybe as far south as in Nashville, Tennessee. All right, now that entire system, okay, it's going to spread its wings here going through the weekend. As we go into Sunday now, you can see how the showers and storms move from the Ohio Valley across into the northeast here. There could be some stormy weather along I-95, D.C. up toward Philly, maybe even as far north as New York City, and then pushing its way farther east and farther north going into Sunday, and then overnight Sunday into Monday. Notice this, though. Isn't that crazy on that map? There's blue on that map. That means cold enough air, we're going to get some snow. That's almost all elevation dependent here. Nothing along I-95, we don't think, but large area here of rain. Many of us gets upwards of 1 to 2 inches of rain. Some spots potentially a little bit more than that, upwards of maybe 3, and then certainly some spots that get the snow. Look at that snow, 8 to 12 inches in some locations here. Again, mostly elevation, heavy wet snow that tends to melt relatively quickly, but the I-95 corridor should be snow-free. But interesting to see that the northeast, Dr. Nab, could be dealing with some snow, whereas the south, we're doing nothing but baking. But in Florida, you know, that's becoming a problem, but we also got the storms there tonight.
Yeah, we do have the possibility of some strong gusty winds and the lightning associated with storms. Not enough rain, I don't think, to be drought busting, but at least northern Florida got a dousing last night. You know, you've been kind of dry during the winter, but a little more than you bargained for. A lot of strong winds with these storms that came through last night. Very wooded area overall in northern Florida, in the Panhandle area, but also, you know, a lot of buildings, power lines were impacted yesterday. Lots of severe thunderstorm warnings and a number of tornado warnings as well in the Panama City area. Things are improving there as things move down to the south. Now, what we're dealing with in central to southern Florida tonight into tomorrow, not overall as potent as what the Panhandle got, but we still have some storms to deal with. And again, the main hazard here would likely be strong gusty winds. The front is moving its way south, but it hasn't gotten through the peninsula by any stretch. Look at Miami, 91 today. They were hotter than that earlier, had another record high. 72 rain-cooled degrees in Tampa, and it's a lot more calm in places like Jacksonville. You can see kind of where the front is with the dew points. And with that dew point of 70 in Miami right now, the heat index 97 in April. Ouch, that just hurts. And now this is the energetic system that has, the business end of it is off the northeast coast, but the jet stream energy in the front are still bringing the unsettled conditions down to Florida, and there's still a lot offshore there in the Gulf of Mexico. So you can see there's a lot of dynamics in the atmosphere. It's not just the heating of the day, but we certainly have plenty of warmth and moisture and instability in the southern portions of Florida, and where you've got the focusing ahead of the front, that's where we're getting the strong storms. Now, let's take a look at where the strongest storms are now. Mostly they're offshore, but they're increasingly starting to come onshore. Tampa down to Sarasota. That's where we've got the most frequent lightning. Now, earlier today, we had widespread reports of wind gusts 40, 50, even close to 60 miles an hour. But more recently, it's these storms right in here near Tampa and Sarasota. A very recent report near Anna Maria Island gusting to 39 miles per hour. And there's stronger gusts for marine interest just offshore. Now, the future radar from the modeling doesn't have the initial position of all the storms exactly right, but the overall sense is that with outflow boundary and sea breeze collisions, we're going to get some increase in the storms, I think, in southeastern Florida later tonight into early tomorrow morning, but then with the heating of the day going away, that will wane. And then we still have a bit of a boundary left over. Some heating of the day will bring back some isolated strong to maybe locally severe storms during the day tomorrow. So it's just a general problem here for Lake Okeechobee and just about every direction from there. So farther south tomorrow, Mike. And I know the folks in South Florida would love to get a break from the heat, well up into the 90s again in Miami today. And when I lived in South Florida, I looked forward to April as a dry, warm month. This has been oppressive.
It's amazing to see the numbers that we've had so far this month. For instance, this morning, by the way, in Miami, 82 degrees was the low. Their warmest April low temperature record in city history, right? And we're still sitting at 91 degrees. It's overcast now. We topped out at a record 95 degrees today. And what's nuts about all this heat, right? A place like Miami, 12 of our 24 days this month, your high temperature has been above 90 degrees. Our average temperature is about 84 or so, Dr. Nab. And I know a lot of people at home are probably thinking, okay, whatever, like South Florida is a hot place. I mean, this really but you have to think about it this way, and you could speak more to this. Is you don't tend to have these big fluctuations, though, in South Florida. Our temperature high and low tend to stay relatively close. This has been a hugely anomalous month.
Yeah, and the ups and downs having to do with when the fronts get close, but not close enough to bring the cool air through. And when the fronts are sitting over northern or central Florida, you get this very warm and moist south to southwesterly flow, and that spells heat for South Florida. And, before this year, our earliest 94-degree day in Miami was in late April, and we beat that by a couple weeks. I mean, so this has been a pattern that has been active over the southern U.S. and laying down those strong fronts in the middle of the state and leaving South Florida in the soup in that southwesterly flow.
You look at some of these stats, too. So many places it is trending the hottest April on record or a top 5, a lot of number ones on this map, and no reason to think that, through the end of the month, we're probably not going to stick at number 1. But that has consequences. It's been very dry, and wildfire season may extend.
Yeah, with the frontal energy farther north, not down the peninsula, that warm, moist air over the peninsula is just going north, and it's expending all the rain farther north. It's not raining that much over the peninsula, and so it is adding to what is usually the dry season, November to April, but this has been drier than usual, and the dryness actually goes back to last year's wet season. September of last year, supposed to be a wet month, it was abnormally dry in Florida then too. So we've been building this problem up for months and months, and we're deep into the dry season and the fire season. I'm still concerned about that before the real wet season starts.
You look at the forecast too. The forecast doesn't offer a lot of relief, either at average chances for precipitation or going through the first week of May even below. You wonder sometimes, Dr. Neb, that the people of Florida might not actually be hoping for kind of one of these benign tropical systems that doesn't have a name to at least provide them a little bit of rain, to provide some heat relief, and maybe help with their severe drought too.
Yeah, but it's usually sometime in May, and it can be mid to late May in some years where you get the wet season, the afternoon thunderstorms routinely happening. But late April and early May, it's usually pretty dry, so this isn't going to help.
Yeah. No, it definitely is not. Dr. Knapp, good discussion there. Appreciate that. Mark, know you're tracking some of the storms for us tonight as well. What are the hot spots you're concerned about?
You know, a brand new tornado watch has been issued from southeast Oklahoma into northeast Texas, and that stretches into portions of Arkansas and Louisiana as well. This is the waiting game. We're not quite there yet, although there is an old boundary just outside of the Dallas area that is starting to kick up at least a couple of thunderstorms in that high shear environment with different wind directions and speeds with height to kind of build in that spin. So that's what we're looking at here, where all of a sudden we had these storms start to fire off. Some of those, especially on the north side, are collapsing right back down. So we're not quite there yet, but the waiting game is begun for this severe weather threat. To the north, it is a severe thunderstorm watch that goes until 11, and we do have some pretty strong storms that are moving through, say, the Tulsa area right now, gusty winds, some hail that's just shy of severe limits, penny to right about pea to penny size hail, so 3/4 of an inch as opposed to getting up to quarter size or 1 inch in diameter. And we've had this very gusty storm come down I-40. Looks like this one's about to run out of the warning for McIntosh and Muskogee, no longer showing perfect signs of very gusty winds, although maybe a little bit more hail on this south side and a little bit of a wind component there as well. So we'll see if this part of the storm surges back towards the Longtown area and needs another warning coming up. It's not there yet. This is the Dallas area with that old boundary I mentioned, and where there was just a second ago 4 different supercells. Most of those have collapsed back down. The lightning not impressive, so we're not separating out those charges. We're not there yet, but I think we will be before the night is done. In fact, give it an hour or so, and we could have a line of storms that comes through Tulsa, straight on down towards the Red River, and then into East Texas. Any one of these could be the one that really takes off and kind of works on its own environment. The best chance for that is when they're all on their own on that southern side. So one near the Red River, maybe somewhere in East Texas into northern Louisiana. You can't take this completely as gospel, but the models have been hinting at those being the strongest storm. So, Mike, that's where I will be watching over the next couple hours.
Yeah. Absolutely, Mark. Good information there. Thank you so much. We hope that you can stick around. A lot more covered tonight here on Weather Underground. Dr. Knapp is back with us to discuss hurricane season, including important information about how and when evacuations are mandated by officials. Information you have to stick around for.
Welcome back to Weather Underground, and take a look at this. This is what happens when over an inch of rain falls in less than an hour. This was just a few hours ago in Wichita, Kansas, where streets all over the area were completely flooded. Must have been a wet drive for that open top bike, motorcycle, vehicle thing. I don't know what you call that, but it's wet. I know that. Unfortunately, the heavy rain threat is continuing in southeast Kansas. Could see more flooding. Can't rule that out as we go through the rest of the day, and that includes after dark. We also have a developing severe weather threat, and I want to show you the visible imagery right now because it shows you the couple areas that we're watching. Number one, we're seeing this kind of line of storms bubbling up, a little bit of an extra lift right along a boundary. That includes outside Tulsa, where we have a brand new severe thunderstorm warning. And there's also a warm front in here, and I think as storms approach that, they will be rotating a little bit later on tonight. So that's why we've got all this extra rain and storms. Here's our warm front that'll have some rotation, and then there's that other boundary that is also giving us some of the bigger storms. So severe thunderstorm watch to the north until 11, to the south tornado watch until midnight, and close to the Tulsa area we do have a severe thunderstorm warning. So getting a little bit closer in with our high resolution radar. Look at this. This is a Boeing segment right in here. There's that indicates some rather gusty winds. Can't completely rule out a spin-up tornado at times on those types of signatures, but we don't see that immediately on that north side of Tulsa. What we do see is that wind shift, indicating that very strong wind surging forward and going towards that radar site. that's off to the east of Tulsa. I think later on, within the next hour or so, we'll have more of that development down that boundary of the areas of low pressure that I showed you, and we could have supercell thunderstorms along that line. So the window goes from let's say the next hour right on through 9 or 10 o'clock, and then we get a big cluster of storms that will then be a wind and rain threat. Dr. Knapp.
Well, Mark, if we look a little bit to the west of Mexico and the continental U.S., generally things look pretty calm out in the Pacific Ocean. It's north of there where we've got jet stream activity, and south of there that we've got what? An invest? Yes, look at this guy right here. Here's Cabo San Lucas. Here's the coast of Mexico. This area of spin and thunderstorms is actually a system that's got broad area of low pressure, some thunderstorms, and some chance to become a depression or even a storm in the next day or so. It's a little thin on convection, but it's got enough there that it might have a short life this weekend. See these stable, little pancakey looking clouds out here? That's cooler water that it's headed toward. It's headed in this direction. So whatever it becomes, it's going to be a short-lived system. But look at that. Plenty of spin and some thunderstorms developing near the center. And the Hurricane Center is actually writing some outlooks about this. They don't routinely start issuing those until May 15th in the East Pac. But they're going to issue another one later tonight to update us, and this is where the system's headed, though. So it's headed toward that cooler water away from land. But in the meantime, 8 out of 10 shot to becoming a depression or storm in the next 2 days, really. They give the 5-day outlook, but this is all going to be over in the next couple of days. So just a taste of what is to come. If this does form, it would be historically early. We never had a depression or storm this early. The earliest named storm is May the 10th, just 3 years ago. And if it becomes a name, it would get the name Amanda. Now, just reminds us, our hurricane season on the Atlantic side is coming soon, and evacuation is something we have to prepare for because storm surge is still the deadliest hurricane hazard historically and still has the potential to take a lot of lives if we don't do evacuation properly. How do evacuations get called? We've been talking about this topic all week. Emergency managers already have their evacuation zones drawn up. What they do is get forecasts from the Hurricane Center. You got the storm surge warning, the storm surge graphic. They get on the phone, do decision support, and then the emergency managers decide which one or more of their zones need to evacuate. And if you're in that zone, then you go when you're told to go. Now, with all of that technology and all the new storm surge warnings, you might think we've solved this problem. We've got the storm surge problem, the evacuation problem, it's all solved, the system's in place. But storm surge still could take dozens to hundreds of lives if we, as the people receiving those evacuation instructions, don't heed them and don't evacuate when told to do so. So we've been talking this week on how to overcome impediments to evacuation. First, don't underestimate the storm surge threat. If you're told to go, you got to go. Pets might cause you to want to stay home because you haven't planned ahead to where you can go that will take pets. Don't leave them at home. Don't stay because you have a pet. Plan ahead to where you can take your pets. The cost can be an impediment, but find a friend or family member who's not all that far away, just outside the evacuation zone, and someone who will take your pets. Make your trip nice and short and not cost very much to get there. And then with the pandemic ongoing, you might think, well, I'm not leaving during the pandemic. We got to maintain social distance. But storm surge and a hurricane could be a much more immediate threat to your life. And wherever it is you're going, take the masks, take the sanitizer, and we can still stay safe from the hurricane and the pandemic. Mark, Mike?
100%. Dr. Knapp, thank you so much for that. Taking you right now to Orlando, Florida. We've got a pretty solid shot for thunderstorms for the remainder of the evening, may even go past the time you go to bed tonight. Currently sitting at 69 degrees. What this means is you got to order a piping hot pizza, have it delivered. Tip your delivery person very well. They're working hard out there for you folks. Just let your mind be free and let your stomach be full. And thanks for staying with us tonight right here on Weather Underground. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis. We'll be with you for an extended hour tonight up until 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Central to keep you apprised of what's going on with severe weather. Storm specialist Mark Elliott in the lab for us tonight, tracking it on the radar. Mark, a couple of hot spots tonight. You think it's only the beginning?
Yeah, we've got maybe a 4 or 5 hour window where things are really going to get quite active with pretty robust coverage of severe thunderstorm and potentially tornado warning storms, tornado warned storms. We've got a double-barreled area of low pressure, and this top area is producing all kinds of lightning, very heavy rain. Could see some flash flooding in southeast Kansas. That's also where we have our severe thunderstorm warning, not too far from Tulsa for small hail and rather gusty winds. But as storms continue to kind of build down this line and then interact with a more favorable environment, both regards to instability and with different wind directions with height, I think we wind up with a tornado threat later on, which is why this tornado watch continues until midnight. Southeast Oklahoma into Arkansas, much of northeast Texas into northwest Louisiana. And so although the area in the severe thunderstorm watch has been stealing the headlines so far, I don't think we're done building south with this line of storms. And you can kind of see that happening. We were all up here earlier today. We had flooding in Wichita. Now that line is building past the area even with Oklahoma City. And we will see that continue to build even into Texas. Texas tried for a little bit. Those storms collapsed. I don't think we're done that far south either. Let's get a little bit closer into Tulsa. Tulsa has quite the line of storms moving on through. Small hail being reported in town. We'll see if this grows. A couple of spotters are watching that carefully to see if it gets to 1 inch or greater, which would then trigger some warnings right along 44. But for now, Rogers in the northern side of Tulsa has a severe thunderstorm warning that goes until 6 o'clock. And you can really see that wind shift. There's a good surge of wind coming forward and going towards that radar site. The radar site is right here, that black circle on your map with the beam coming out of there and giving us new data as it spins around and through. That brighter green color indicating that kind of 50 to 60 mile per hour wind potential. So that's what's triggered the warning here. An interesting storm that was coming along I-40. I say that because it has split in two. One part going this way, another part going this way, and I-40 could be left in the kind of the drier side of things. This southern one starting to show a little bit more organization. I'll pause this for you so I can draw on it just a little bit. We've got what's known as the eagle wing pattern starting up, but because of that split, if this were to start rotating, it could actually rotate clockwise instead of counterclockwise potentially. So that's something that we'll be watching. There is a hail core with this one and some gustier winds on that southern side. We'll have to watch that because it is in a decent environment all on its own. The wider view, however, shows you that there's just not that much happening in that area that has a tornado watch yet. I think that will change because this area also has pretty robust winds, different winds with height, a strong kind of surge of wind in the lowest levels of the atmosphere there in northeast Texas. That will help to encourage the severe weather component as we go through the rest of the day and even the beginning of the night, which is what this model is picking up on, suggesting that we could have several different supercell thunderstorms cranking within the next hour, maybe hour and a half. This one right here towards the Red River and the others in East Texas that are more on their own could have the best opportunity to really tap into that shifting wind environment. Now, Mike, you know these high-resolution models aren't always exactly right, but it has been consistent with that flavor for the past several runs.
At least it gives us an idea, right?
Yep.
It gives us an idea of what we need to be prepared for. Good stuff there, Mark. Thank you so much. We know that severe weather could return going into the weekend as well. So when we come back here on Weather Underground, we highlight the areas that'll be at risk, likely to include portions of the Tennessee Valley and into the Mid-Atlantic. So you want to stick around for those details. Also tonight, keeping a very close eye on that radar. And Florida is a state that we're actively watching, including tons of storms lighting us up from Sarasota to St. Pete and really taking aim at us now in the Tampa Bay area. We encourage you to stay inside tonight. These are electrified storms. You might even see some small hail within these storms. Very rainy night from Kissimmee to Melbourne over toward Vero Beach. Some of those storms could get active across South Florida as well. There's a look at the future radar tonight. Sliding their way southbound here, boy, we sure could use the rain to cool us off, but a brief bout of severe weather could hit us again tomorrow afternoon. We're back after this. How how about the intense hail falling for us in Moseley, Virginia? This just outside of Richmond. You can just hear it pounding down, right? But wicked winds that also came with it and some serious rain. This all captured here by the doorbell cam. Just like Armageddon out there, right? And just the sound of it. I don't know, to me, just hail is one of those intimidating weather sounds. I know that lightning for a lot of people does it, but to me, every ding is just like an ooh, it's an insurance claim, right? All right, so let's talk about tomorrow's threat, because some parts of Virginia, I think probably maybe the Hampton Roads area could be a threat, but the Ohio Valley, the Tennessee Valley at risk for storms. That'll include Nashville, could include Louisville, could include Huntsville, Atlanta, or Charlotte. So just keep an eye on the storms tomorrow. There could be possibilities that some, get vigorous through the day. Watch this system in the morning for some showers across Middle Tennessee, right through the Ohio Valley here. And you can clearly see the spin on the future radar there, right? And then later in the day, we're talking late afternoon, early evening, some of those storms could become severe here. East Tennessee, Knoxville, you might be a location, extending over into the Piedmont of North Carolina as well. But a lot of rain we pulled out of these storms as well. And so we do think there is an excessive rain threat and maybe even a flood threat through the Ohio Valley from a Paducah to a Louisville, Indianapolis, Columbus, Charleston, all locations where you could get some brief flash flooding as the storm system moves through. Now, let's time this out for you going into Sunday now, because now the risk rolls up the I-95 corridor, D.C., Baltimore, Philadelphia, through even Jersey and New York. We could see some strong storms here. And then the entire rain shield moving its way north and east through the Northeast. And also notice there's some blue on that map. There's going to be snow embedded with it as well. Just something to think about going into the weekend. Mark?
And flooding, of course, top of mind when you see scenes like this. Training thunderstorms, the kind that bring round after round of rain to the same spots, trigger flash flooding. And if you've ever underestimated the power of moving water before, this shows you why we always say turn around, don't drown. If there was water covering that entire crevasse, you wouldn't even know that the road wasn't there anymore in east central Ohio. It carved through in just a matter of hours. So we wanted to know, do the road materials make a difference when flash flooding like that occurs? So we called up Jim Mack, the Director of Market Development with CEMEX, for some answers. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
So, Jim, let's go right into it. There's, roads made of cement. There's roads made of asphalt. Is there a difference when Mother Nature throws that much water at them?
Well, that's a great question. There is a difference in it. I do want to say that for the most part, both asphalt and concrete roadways can be made more resilient and flood resistant, but concrete, just by its very nature, is a little bit more naturally flood resistant, just by the stiffness of the system. And the other thing we have to think about when we talk about flooding of pavements is that we need to distinguish between washouts and what's called inundation. What you were just describing as washouts, that's where the running water comes along and washes out the underlying ground, it washes out the pavement, and both concrete and asphalt pavements are susceptible to that. Neither pavement performs very well in those applications.
Now, Jim,
the more silent killer is what we call inundation. And that's just the rising of the water. It's those big aerial shots you see where water is every place. And that covers many, many, many more roads than will be washed out. For example, in Nebraska last year when the Missouri River flooding was happening, there were about 1,500 miles of roadway underwater at one time. And so that just soaks the base and the ground and the material underneath the pavement. And that leads to long-term deterioration of a pavement that's not as stiff as other pavement types are, such as concrete.
And now, Jim, I lived in the Houston area for a long time, and a lot of concrete roads there, and it seems one of the main reasons is so much repetitive inundation. And my understanding is that after a flood, the asphalt roads can be damaged more by people getting right back on the road, whereas the concrete seems to be a little more resilient when the cars get back on the road. Is Houston a good example of that?
Houston is the example of that. You're absolutely right. Houston is a concrete city, and we've had several flood events. And it's the reason why is, and I need to go pavement geek on you for just a little bit, but the asphalt roadways, they're a flexible pavement. They're also flexible, and they rely on the strength of the underlying materials to help carry the loads. When that gets wet, it gets weak. And so when I load the pavement right after during the rescue operations, emergency operations, even for a year after, it takes about a year for that ground to get strong again. And I'm damaging the pavement that whole time. Concrete carries a load. That's where the strength is in the concrete pavement. There's still base layers, but it's that rigid layer that carries the load and allows it to kind of bridge over all those soft spots.
Just incredible insight there. Jim Mack, thanks so much for joining us tonight. And now we want to take a look at the big picture. It starts, of course, with the storms. Couple of areas that we're following for severe weather. A corridor of central Florida could have some strong storms and some flooding. We go into the center of the country, more widespread severe weather risk through the rest of our day today and into tonight. And behind that, boy, does it get hot. A heat wave building across the west as we head into the weekend. We'll be right back. This Saturday, make sure you're here for a special new episode of Heavy Rescue. It's an episode so wild, it'll have you on the edge of your seat.
Let's make this happen.
This time on Heavy Rescue 401.
Watch it.
A tree-bound wreck
Whoa, whoa. Stop.
puts down roots.
Whoa. Everybody away from the tanker.
Steve and Sonny battle
Go. We gotta go.
a rail line rollover
Oh. Yo, it's gonna roll.
and a load of carrots
Holy mackerel.
burns the crew from Chatham.
Whoa. What I was afraid of.
That's Heavy Rescue, an all-new episode Saturday night at 9/8 Central right here on the Weather Channel. And now we've been following day after day after day of severe weather. It's why we're here till 9 o'clock again tonight, Dr. Nab. But will next week change up that pattern enough to end the severe weather threat?
Probably not. I mean, the pattern will change, but I think weather systems will just kind of come at some of us from different directions, but still bring more severe weather to the middle of the country and maybe a little farther north than we've been seeing, in addition to getting some of the same areas affected as we're getting tonight. Now, what's going to happen in the pattern is we're going to have a big ridge building over the west. You can kind of see that already here in the water vapor imagery, and we've got our system that Mark's been telling you about tonight that's headed east. So unlike the Easter Sunday outbreak, which originated over the Pacific and farther south over California, came at us this way, we got to watch for systems coming over the top of the ridge into next week. So let's see what the models are doing in that regard. There's the ridge, the white lines, the middle, the upper level pattern. You can see the ridge over the west coast. What we got to do is watch these disturbances out here. And you actually got to watch pretty far back south of the Aleutians to see what's going to happen into next week. Watch this guy as he gets to near the Pacific Northwest by Sunday, and it's this troughing that over the next 2 days into Monday and Tuesday, it's kind of hard to see on Monday, but there it is. Tuesday, it's starting to show up as a pretty strengthening middle to upper level trough getting into the northern plains by Tuesday. The colors are the low level spin, and so we probably will get a surface low to develop somewhere up in the Midwest, and that'll bring a front down into this area and bring the warm sector down into the southern plains and the lower to mid-Mississippi Valley on Tuesday. Then that system will continue eastward, and that could bring the southeast and the Tennessee Valley, maybe even parts of the mid-Atlantic, into the warm sector, into that energy where the instability and the wind shear will be maximized. And then by Thursday, maybe most of the weather, at least the severe, is getting off the coast, although we might lay a front down over Florida. So, Mike, I'm concerned about the middle of next week. A surface low starting to form in the northern plains and bringing a front through the same areas that are being affected by severe tonight. Question is, how far north does that threat get?
Yeah. Well, we think it could go on for days as it treks its way through the eastern half of the country, right? So we're going to break this down for you, but we know it has been already a very active tornado season so far. 540 tornadoes so far to date. And you look at the states that are leading the way, Mississippi, Texas, and Alabama. Mississippi by a wide margin at this point. Some of those tornadoes have been devastating tornadoes, EF3s and EF4s. Now, as we go through late April, early May, we start to see a migration of the core area where it's most favorable for tornadoes to shift a little bit back to the west across the southern plains, in particular Texas and Oklahoma, and maybe a little bit farther north too, starting to edge its way into the Midwest, with the South usually starting to back off just a little bit. But to Dr. Knapp's point, as he was laying out the pattern for us, look what happens at the surface as we start next Tuesday now, okay? Front comes in, there's that low. We're going to pull moisture out of the Gulf of Mexico, so that'll allow us to build some thunderstorms. Now they'll take off if we've got enough instability. So if we've got instability in the forecast, watch these thunderstorms build rapidly and tall, okay? And those ones could be the ones that produce the most violent weather underneath them. Wind shear will be ample, we think. We're going to have a decent amount of turning of the winds with height in the same areas out ahead of that front. So the conditions will be ripe for severe weather, including tornadoes. So there's a look at Tuesday's forecast. Again, it's going to be southern plains into the lower Mississippi River Valley. And then as we progress through time here, you'll notice that it's not a real quick moving system, okay? So now going into Wednesday, the south is in play up through the Ohio Valley, now starting to flirt with portions of the mid-Atlantic and northeast, where you'll become more of a focus for those storms going later in the week on Thursday. Mostly the eastern seaboard now, from, well, still maybe Pittsburgh all the way to the coastline here, and then a Friday event mainly in the northeast. But 4 days next week, Mark, where we could be looking for severe storms starting in plains, ending in New England.
Yeah, April into May, right on cue. We are certainly in a more active severe weather pattern, Mike. And, well, that's what we're following for the next hour on Weather Underground. Much more on our top story, which is indeed the severe weather threat in the center of the country in particular. Winds and hail so far, but a growing tornado threat over the next couple of hours. Plus, what goes into the timing of a hurricane evacuation? Dr. Knapp gives us the ins and outs coming up.
Next on Weather Underground, extended coverage for you as dangerous storms target the south once again. So we're breaking down for you the timing, the locations that'll be at risk through the evening hours. These thunderstorms could contain damaging winds, big hail, and tornadoes.
And we're also closely watching Florida for the second day in a row. We'll show you where strong and potentially severe thunderstorms are battering portions of the Sunshine State, and when that threat could shift even farther south. Plus, it's another weekend and another weekend storm system to track. Find out who's in the bullseye for more heavy rain and rumbles of thunder into Sunday.
And our countdown to hurricane season continues, and tonight hurricane expert Dr. Rick Knapp explains how and when evacuations are ordered. It's important information you need next on Weather Underground. And thanks for staying with us tonight right here on Weather Underground. We'll be with you for an extra hour tonight till 9 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 o'clock Central. I'm Mike Bettis.
And I'm Mark Elliott. And of course, we're here with you tonight because of the big story, severe weather in the same area that we've seen deadly and destructive tornadoes throughout this week. And that's right in the smack dab of the center of the country. Like who could forget this out of Medill, Oklahoma? Just a terrible storm coming through on Wednesday. This tornado was captured basically start to finish right here live on Weather Underground. Preliminary rating here of an EF2, and you can see the damage it caused to that manufacturing building when that condensation funnel lowering down, the circulation obviously in play here right over this complex of buildings. You see all that debris flying off with those then inflow winds going back towards the storm as we follow that off into the distance. I think there will be some more tornadoes before today is done. Again, this was from Wednesday, but tonight is looking more and more active as well. Here's the setup for you, a bit of a double-barreled area of low pressure, and so far the bulk of the action has been kind of in between the two lows, with several severe thunderstorm warnings with that, lots of lightning, lots of wind, and several reports of 1 inch hail, maybe a report of 1.5 inches as well. But when storms really start going in here, and we do have some new lightning showing up in that very unstable air across Texas, and then when those storms approach this front that has a built-in wind shift with it, I think that's our best opportunity to see tornadoes. And that's why we have a tornado watch in that area that goes until midnight, where we have that complex of thunderstorms. Severe thunderstorm watch goes until 11. So several more hours of this. All of that said, it is reasonably quiet in that area that has a tornado potential so far. There is still plenty of time for that to change. The sundowner storms, as the sun sets, those low-level winds start to crank just a little bit more, and sometimes that's just enough to switch that shear factor, switch that different wind direction with height in the atmosphere, and start off the tornado. So that's something that we'll be watching for. That said, look at this cluster of storms. There's plenty to look at within the severe thunderstorm threat zone. Just east of Tulsa, severe thunderstorm warning continues for Rogers and Tulsa and Wagner, right along 44 with very gusty winds. In fact, basically right on top of the National Weather Service radar site. So maybe not the best view of this storm as it's coming on through, but the bottom line is that we know there's very strong winds moving through that warning and 1-inch hail potential as well. Out ahead of the line, this was a storm that split. This was part of it earlier. Now the severe component is just south of I-40 for Haskell, Muskogee, and Sequoia counties, and kind of narrowing that down as I talk, goes until 6:30 for that severe thunderstorm warning. Again, hail potential there goes until 6:30. No sign of rotation with this storm. That is the good news. And also following this storm that was actually back here, this is an interesting shaped warning because it's being issued by the Norman, Oklahoma office. They were warning for hail. This is the Tulsa side. It's a little bit weaker, but the competing National Weather Service office is trying to keep everybody ahead of the risks tonight. And every once in a while, it forms right on those county borders. We will be watching this zone still. We're starting to see that line unwrapping a little bit farther south. This is a storm that could really take off. The environment is very favorable right on either side of the Red River in a very similar location to where we had that long tornado producing storm or complex of storms on Wednesday. So now that area is starting and there's a little bit of that old outflow boundary and old boundary that's kicking up storms south of there, those are zones that we really need to watch through the rest of the day. Why do I think that's a favored location? Well, it's all about the low-level winds and the change of those low-level winds with height. This is the forecast for the next hour, about an hour from now, and the surface winds are coming up from the south like this, maybe even bending back a little southeast and northwest, while the winds aloft at about 5,000 feet, look how they cut across and will be increasing with speed. So this is a very favored location with that turning, Mike, for rotating supercell thunderstorms, and I think we're just getting to that time of day and that environment where the storms are going to start to go on their own as well.
Yeah, exactly why we've got that tornado watch in place, right? Mark, thanks so much for that update. We'll have more on that coming up. But some new video to show you out of Hopewell, Virginia here as the hailstorm that rolled through. Whoa, for sure, right? We've had numerous places that have been hit by the hail. A lot of storms around the Richmond area. And some storms could return force tomorrow. It may include around the Hampton Roads area, but primarily, it'll be a Tennessee to Ohio Valley event, maybe rolling its way through the Carolinas as well. But Huntsville, Nashville, Atlanta, Charlotte, these are all places that could be dealing with some pretty strong storms, maybe even severe storms with large hail and high winds. Watch with the future radar progs on this, because you're going to see these storms flare in the morning. We'll probably see an intensification through the afternoon. Could include East Tennessee, could include Eastern Kentucky, through the Piedmont of North Carolina, then rolling its way north and east. So yes, Virginia will get hit, maybe even Roanoke, and then a lot of heavy rain up through the Ohio Valley as well. What that will lead to is a possibility of some flooding, and so flash flooding is a possibility. Could be a Paducah, maybe even close to St. Louis, then up toward maybe a Cincinnati or Columbus as well. All areas where just keep an eye on the weather, and if you don't have to travel, just don't be out on the roads, because that's when we tend to find ourselves in the most trouble, is behind the wheel of our vehicle in high water. Watch this system again spin through hour by hour. We take you into Sunday now, or mid-morning. We're in the mid-Atlantic. Strong storms could be along I-95 from D.C. to Baltimore to Philly, maybe even up toward New York as well. Then pushing late Sunday into Monday now across the Northeast. It probably not even exiting till late on Monday across the Northeast. But what you notice on that map is there is some blue on it, which means someplace it'll be cold enough for some snow to mix in there. So a solid amount of rain comes out of this thing. For a lot of people, 1 to 2 inches of rain, with pockets of 2 to 3 embedded within that. But I talked about the snow. Let's break that out specifically. Look at these totals. Wow! There are some spots, and now it's going to be elevation dependent for most of you. 8 to 12 inches of snow is coming in. This is going to be probably up through the White and Green Mountains here. I-95 should stay snow-free, but this late in the season, pretty remarkable to talk about that. It'll be heavy, wet snow. It'll melt relatively quickly, we think. But having said that, the eastern seaboard is an interesting place, Dr. Nab, because we could be talking about storms and snow to the north, but down to the south, a whole different animal where it has been heat and humidity and storms, in particular, Florida.
Yeah, even by Florida standards, summer has come a little bit too soon. And here's a live look at Miami. Now, you had record-breaking high temperatures today in the mid-90s, and so you're thinking, Nab, cool me off. Well, the sun's going to go down soon. That'll help. But can you get some rain? Well, it's trying. Most of the storms in the Miami area are just offshore and extending out over the Gulf Stream, out over the Atlantic. But you'll have more chances at some rain later tonight as you stay on the warm and soupy side of the cold front that's trying to come down the Florida Peninsula. Now, most of the strongest storms will probably be north of you, between Alligator Alley and Lake Okeechobee, for example. But we could later tonight get some storms into the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. Now, the temperatures really have been oppressive down in South Florida. It's down into the 80s now, 71 rain-cooled degrees in Tampa. The dew points, though, it's oppressive. Dew point is still 73 in Miami. And even at this hour, the heat index, 89 degrees. So you're in the soup, but most of the energy has been taken by the frontal system farther north. We've even got some storms firing off in the eastern Gulf of Mexico right now. And so most of the storms are off to the north. And there's the line that's trying to form near Miami. But again, it's extending mostly over the northwestern Bahamas. Now, let's take a closer look at the Florida Peninsula. So here's Miami. Look at all these storms over the Gulf Stream, and right offshore you've got a thunder shower, but just not a whole lot happening on land yet. Most of that is up in the Sarasota area, over to Vero and Fort Pierce, and there's a lot more on the way. We've had some wind gusts approaching 40 miles an hour with some of these systems. The stronger winds, 40, 50, gusts of 60 miles an hour, happened in the I-4 corridor and in the Cape Canaveral area earlier this morning. But only recently have we gotten a gust in Anna Maria Island, about 39 miles an hour, and those winds are occurring in those storms offshore. So that's what's coming on shore in that area. Let's look at the future radar, and you'll see what I'm talking about how most of this is going to sag south. But if the model's right, then maybe later tonight and getting into the midnight hour, we might have a cluster of thunderstorms over the metro areas in Palm Beach, Broward, maybe Miami-Dade counties. But it'll be short-lived, and then the heating of the day wanes, and then tomorrow morning you got to start it up again. But most of the ignition will be along the boundary in central Florida, Lake Okeechobee, a little bit north of there. And that's where most of the storms will happen tomorrow. Maybe get some stuff in Palm Beach. And then after this, Mike, starting on Sunday, it really starts to quiet down. And we've got a quiet, warm, and dry period for South Florida for most of next week.
What's funny about how you say that is probably for most people they'd be okay with that. In Florida, but we do anything for some cooler, wetter weather, I'm sure, because this month has been torture, especially across South Florida. And I think about even this morning, some of the numbers we woke up to, 82 was the low temperature in Miami, warmest April low temperature on record, Dr. Nab. And it extends, though, to Naples. It extends to West Palm, Fort Lauderdale. All these places are going through tremendous heat this month.
Yeah, what happened this morning and what we're seeing happening most of this month is a lot to do with the frontal systems and the severe weather systems that have been going across the southern tier of the continental U.S. And all of the energy in the fronts are farther north. And so you're getting this deep southerly flow across the Florida Peninsula, but then the rain is all happening farther north. So you sit in the soup in Miami, but you don't get any of the beneficial rains. And that's, those are temperatures like you see in July, not April. April used to be my favorite time of the year in South Florida. I'm not missing it this year.
People are probably really hating on it right now, unfortunately. By the way, Miami, we've had 15 90-degree days so far this year, the most on record to date. The previous record was 8, so basically have doubled it. And a lot of places, come to your point here, Dr. Dab, have had record-setting heat this month. A lot of these cities are on pace for the #1 warmest April on record, but it comes at a price.
It sure does. Late April has historically been the earliest time we'd get mid-90s. We've been beating that by a couple of weeks, and it's been going on and on since then. And this very dry season, drier than usual and hotter than usual, is adding to the drought problem. And it's not just been the normal dry season, it's been drier than average, and that goes all the way back to last fall. September is usually a wet month in South Florida. We didn't even get rain in South Florida last September because the hurricanes were offshore, we were in the sinking air. So September until now has been way drier than usual, and so I'm really concerned about water supply issues. Lake Okeechobee is way down. I'm concerned about fire weather as we get into this dry period this coming week.
As so many Floridians are, right? And you look even, short-term forecast. Let's take it out, 10 days or so. The forecast, 2 weeks. The forecast doesn't look favorable. Average or below average chances for some rain, so it's going to end up being more of the same.
Yeah, no, usually late April and early May are usually pretty dry, and it's mid-May into late May that the rainy season clicks in. Let's hope it does it sooner rather than later this year. They could use a break.
Yeah. Oh, they could use a huge break. Floridians, we are rooting for you. We are on your side on this one. We'll pull through this. Mark?
Yeah, and right now, guys, we are watching the center of the country. That potential for severe weather again through the plains. I say again because we actually have a new supercell developing in a very similar spot to where we were following tornadic supercells just 2 days ago. Tornado watch for this area that's basically hugging the Red River on either side, Oklahoma into Texas, but stretching into Arkansas and Louisiana. Tornado watch goes until midnight across this area with a severe thunderstorm watch to the north. Now, there are plenty of severe thunderstorm warnings in that zone, including east of Tulsa. Very gusty winds with some embedded hail have moved right over the Doppler radar site here, kind of following 44 for Rogers, Tulsa, and Wagner. No sign of rotation here, just a lot of straight line wind. How about this storm? This one is just south of I-40, headed almost directly towards Fort Smith. Reports of 1.5-inch hail already, ping pong ball size hail in the history of this one. And a brand new warning. Let me just shift that screen over for you so you can get the latest details, because that's where this is going. We're talking Haskell, LaFleur, and Sequoia counties. New severe thunderstorm warning, mostly for a hail threat until 7 o'clock. But interestingly enough, I told you we were worried about that area right along the Red River. This is a brand new storm that just popped up. Let me loop this for you to show how it came out from just about nothing in the past couple of minutes and is now really increasing, turning on the lightning, and there is indeed lightning. So this line is developing kind of north to south here across this area, from the area that already had the storms from Tulsa and points down to I-40, but now closer to the Red River, where there is a much better sheer environment, lots of spin with height. If this storm can sustain over the next couple of minutes, Mike, I think that's going to be the one to watch as it makes its way eastbound.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that. Mark, thank you so much, and we hope you can stick around. A lot more to cover for you tonight here on Weather Underground. Dr. Nab returns, and he's basically looking at hurricane season, including important information about how and when evacuations are mandated. Plus, are you driving on asphalt or are you driving on concrete? We're going to explain why it can make a big difference when it comes to flooding.
Welcome back to Weather Underground. Some new video to show you of what the storms look like as they built through Oklahoma, Owasso, Oklahoma, to be more precise. Look at that rolling shelf cloud there. Then you're in the whale's mouth, that turbulent sky underneath that front edge. And so much low-level moisture that you had this extra low-level base come through as well. A bubbling atmosphere that is ripe for more severe weather in eastern Oklahoma, down through Texas. A large zone of severe weather concern. To the north, it's a severe thunderstorm watch that continues until 11 o'clock. South and east, tornado watch until midnight. And here's the wide view of the storms that we're following. Several severe thunderstorm warnings in northern and eastern Oklahoma. However, I think the one that I'm most concerned about is not yet on a warning track. Let's get into that storm that's basically just north of the river. Texas on the south side, on the lower side of your screen now. Just up the screen a bit, that's the Oklahoma side, just outside Durant. So this is a supercell thunderstorm that is now breaking through that cap. It's all on its own. It's got lots of very warm, very moist air to tap into, and it does show those signs that it is starting to at least rotate in the mid-levels of the storm, with the eagle wing pattern and a little bit of an appendage starting off as well. We're about as far away from a radar site here as could possibly be, so we don't have a good look at that rotation yet, but just the look at how those raindrops appear suggests that that storm is rotating. Then you have all these storms here in northern Oklahoma, 1-inch hail east of Tulsa still headed generally towards Wagoner and the Locust Grove region. 1.5-inch hail for the storm that, no rotation there. 1.5-inch hail at times for this storm, which is now also bending right just a little bit as it makes its way along I-40, and that suggests some rotation component as well. So big hail and at least some rotation there. So it's severe season for sure, but Dr. Knabb, could it also be tropical season at the same time?
Yeah, the atmosphere and the humans don't always agree on when that actually starts. We say that the East Pacific hurricane season starts May 15th, a little more than a couple weeks from now, but there's a little something going on. Now, if you can't see it on this shot, because here's the area that Mark's talking about, and that's the last thunderstorm you can find for hundreds and hundreds of miles unless you go all the way down here. Look at that. Look at that spin. That's an invest. It's an area of low pressure, a little bit ahead of schedule. We haven't had a tropical depression or tropical storm form in East Pac in April before, but there's a chance that could happen. This is starting to look a little healthier. Now, it's a little bit thin on the thunderstorms, the convection, but there's enough there that maybe in the overnight period, when it gets a little more unstable over the tropics, this could make it over the top to become a tropical depression. Look at that outflow. It's very well defined, no wind shear in the way, but those pancakey clouds ahead of it, that's cooler waters, so it's got a short life ahead of it. So right now, the water temperatures are in the 80s, but it'll be in the 70s by the time it gets farther north and west this weekend. But in the meantime, Hurricane Center is giving it an 8 out of 10 shot to become a depression or storm in the next day or so. You get to Sunday and it starts to get to that cooler water. So this is not really a 5-day outlook. It's really more of a 1 or 2 day. This will all be over and done in less than 5 days. So it's kind of academic. It's not land threatening, but it could be our earliest named storm. If it makes it to that, then that would be named Amanda. But in any case, it's interesting, and it's a reminder that our Atlantic hurricane season is only a few weeks away. Coming up on 5 weeks, right? And we have to be planning for evacuation. Been talking about that all week. How are evacuations called by emergency managers? Well, the first thing they do is they look at their existing evacuation zones that they've already prescribed. And then when the Hurricane Center briefs them on a hurricane that's coming, and they look at the storm surge flooding maps, they look at the storm surge warning, and they have those briefings, then with that decision support, the emergency managers are the ones that make the decisions on which one or multiple of their zones to call for an evacuation. And if your zone is called, then you go. So you'd think with all these new storm surge warnings and these evacuation instructions based on those, we've got the storm surge problem and evacuation problem solved, right? Not quite, because we have to have compliance with those evacuations to avoid losing dozens or hundreds of people from storm surge, which still could happen if people don't adhere to those evacuation instructions. So we need to work together to get over any impediments to evacuation. One of those could be underestimating the storm surge threat. Don't think it can't happen to you. Also, if you have pets, don't leave them. Don't evacuate without them, but don't stay home because you have pets because you got nowhere to go. Plan ahead. Stay at a friend's place or something where you could take your pet so that everybody gets out safely. The cost of evacuation can be a hindrance, but plan to go to a friend's house that's not that far away so you don't have a long trip that's costly and you're exposing yourself to more people along the way, right? And speaking of which, with the pandemic, don't let social distancing prevent you from evacuating because that storm surge is a more direct threat to your life. Mike, just got to wear the masks, bring the sanitizer, stay as far away as you can. You can be safe from the virus and hurricanes at the same time.
Yeah, just being smart. Being smart goes a long way, right, Dr. Knabb? Thank you so much for that. We hope you can stick around. A lot more to cover for you tonight right here on Weather Underground, including strong to severe storms across the middle of the country and across the Mid-South here. So we're going to track that for you through the Architect's tornado watches in effect in the atmosphere, ripe to explode.
Thank you to the firefighters,
police officers,
hospital staffs,
grocery store workers,
for the endless hours, exhausting shifts,
sleepless nights,
and days spent away from your loved ones.
You've been here for us since the pandemic began.
Now it's our turn to be here for you.
Hurricane season starts June 1st. The Weather Channel stands ready.
For a season that may be harder than any before.
We know your mission is to protect and save lives.
That's ours, too. throughout hurricane season.
We stand ready to join your fight.
And we thank you so much for staying with us right here on Weather Underground. I'm Mike Bettis, and we're joined tonight by storm specialist Mark Elliott, covering severe weather for you tonight. We'll be with you for an extra hour tonight until 9 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock Central. Mark, and storms already getting active tonight, in particular Oklahoma, but this tornado watch has your attention as well.
Yeah, and on the Oklahoma side, in that tornado watch, we do have a building storm near the Red River. First, though, look at this storm. This is in Pryor, Oklahoma. Line of storms here has been producing very heavy rain and gusty winds. I think you're looking at the shelf cloud there, that front edge of the gusty winds, and between the travel on the roads there with the lines in the road and kind of bumping along, and the winds messing with the signal, you're seeing the ramifications of that with the signal going in and out at times. But that storm is one of note, and then maybe most importantly, the one right in here in our tornado watch area. So again, severe thunderstorm watch to the north until 11, everyone else in the red, tornado watch until midnight, and a brand new severe thunderstorm warning on that storm that's just north of the river, north of the Texas border. I want to start there because this could be the one that goes tornadic sooner rather than later. It is definitely a supercell thunderstorm on this classic presentation, a bit of a hook signature back towards the west and south side of this storm, a fanning out aloft as we have a bit of that eagle wing pattern, got a hail core in the pink. A lot of that, if you just look at the red, it starts to look like that kind of cartoon of a supercell thunderstorm. So let's take a look at the rotation. Now we're pretty far away from this storm, so this is not saying anything about the rotation down towards the ground, and it's not even all that put together yet in the mid-levels of the storm, which is what we're looking at. But there definitely is rotation here. Green going towards the radar site, red going away. That is our counterclockwise rotation right in that southwest side of the storm. So again, the signs are there that this is getting into that environment that's more and more favorable, more and more likely to see tornadoes as we go through the next couple of hours. Again, severe thunderstorm warning here for now, but that is one worth watching. We're also looking at this, broken line of storms through the rest of northern and eastern portions of Oklahoma. This is the complex that came through Tulsa about an hour and a half ago with anywhere from 1 to 1.5 inch hail and a bunch of wind. Now that wind threat is pointed right at Locust Grove, so Cherokee, Delaware, and Mays counties. You've got a severe thunderstorm warning. No sign of rotation here. It is all a straight line wind threat, blasting basically right down the radial, right down the line of the radar, which is why you got that color shift. This storm is all on its own. This is the Fort Smith area of Arkansas. So we're now in Oklahoma over here. You're on the Arkansas side where this radar is looking at the storm. It is starting to show at least some signs of rotation as well. I want to show you that. It's Haskell, LaFleur, and Sequoia counties. Here's a look at that rotation. It's tough to see with this mode of the radar, but there actually is a bit of rotation back on that western flank. Otherwise, it's all about the very heavy rain and big-time hail. If we take a look at the hail potential with this one, in its history, it has had ping-pong ball size hail. That will continue generally towards Fort Smith, maybe points just south from there. We also have some other severe thunderstorm warnings right along that line of storms, which you can follow down to that big one that I'm watching near the Oklahoma-Texas border. There is that favored spot tonight for tornadoes right in here. Some extra winds in the lowest levels of the environment that are at a very different wind direction. And Mike, that shear can be ingested by the storms and turn us tornadic for the next few hours.
It did it, can. Mark, thanks so much for that update. When we come back here on Weather Underground, the threat for severe weather doesn't end tonight. Could come back for us this weekend. Excuse me. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the weekend storm threats that is increasing and the locations that we're most concerned about. So you don't want to miss that. And closely following the radar for you tonight as well, because so many areas are under the gun for some storms. That will include Florida. Into tonight, it's going to be central and south Florida that sees the storms. You can see that they've really been hammering us around Tampa and St. Pete tonight and around Sarasota. Electrified mess for us right now. So the best place for you to be is inside. Over the beaches right now, getting hit hard. Those storms progress their way south through the evening. Welcome back to Weather Underground. We're watching storms for you tonight. And how about the storms that hit us here in Virginia? This all captured on a doorbell cam in Mosley, just outside of Richmond. The hail pounding down, a wind-driven rain, some pretty intense storms hammering us here. It's amazing to me what we can capture on our doorbell cams these days, and everyone's got one. But they just give us a really good picture of what's going on with the weather. Imagine if we had just millions and millions of doorbell cams that we just kind of somehow, I don't know, crowdsourced and showed them to you. Well, you see a lot of stuff, wouldn't you? Maybe some stuff you didn't want to see also. Well, what we may not want to see tomorrow is an opportunity for more storms. And that could include parts of Virginia, the Hampton Roads area in particular, but Nashville to Knoxville to Atlanta to Charlotte. These are all places where storms could fire up for us again tomorrow. We've got a complex that's going to roll its way through the Ohio Valley. You can clearly see the spin on the future radar. That'll happen even in the morning, and then through the afternoon with some instability. Farther to the east of that, you might end up getting some more intense storms. That could include East Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, and then through North Carolina, and probably through Virginia as well. But all that heavy rain also rolls its way up through the Ohio Valley. What that could lead to is the possibility of some flooding. Paducah, Louisville, Lexington, Indianapolis, Columbus, Charleston. These are all places where just keep an eye on the roadways in particular, where you could have some high water in those roadways. If you don't have to travel, just say, you know what, I'm good. I'm going to stay home, and we'll do it another day, right? So as we time this out for you, those storms roll their way through the mid-Atlantic. Could have some strong storms even midday or even maybe before lunch. D.C. or Baltimore or Philadelphia, then up through New York through the day. Those storms extend up along the I-95 corridor, all the way up into Maine, by the way. But then also notice cold enough, especially in northern New England there, where snow mixes in, believe it or not, last week of April, and snow mixes in. For most of it, it's 1 to 2 inches of rain, and the high elevation snow could produce as much as a foot. Mark?
And flooding, of course, top of mind when you see scenes like this. Training thunderstorms, the kind that bring round after round of rain to the same spots, trigger flash flooding. And if you've ever underestimated the power of moving water before, this shows you why we always say turn around, don't drown. If there was water covering that entire crevasse, you wouldn't even know that the road wasn't there anymore in east central Ohio. It carved through in just a matter of hours. So we wanted to know, do the road materials make a difference when flash flooding like that occurs? So we called up Jim Mack, the Director of Market Development with CEMEX, for some answers. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
So, Jim, let's go right into it. There's, roads made of cement. There's roads made of asphalt. Is there a difference when Mother Nature throws that much water at them?
Well, that's a great question. There is a difference in it. I do want to say that for the most part, both asphalt and concrete roadways can be made more resilient and flood resistant, but concrete, just by its very nature, is a little bit more naturally flood resistant, just by the stiffness of the system. And the other thing we have to think about when we talk about flooding of pavements is that we need to distinguish between washouts and what's called inundation. What you were just describing is washouts. That's where the running water comes along and washes out the underlying ground, it washes out the pavement, and both concrete and asphalt pavements are susceptible to that. Neither pavement performs very well in those applications.
Now, Jim,
the more silent killer is what we call inundation, and that's just the rising of the water. It's those big aerial shots you see where water is every place, and that covers many, many, many more roads than will be washed out. For example, in Nebraska last year when the Missouri River flooding was happening, there were about 1,500 miles of roadway underwater at one time, and so that just soaks the base and the ground and the material underneath the pavement, and that leads to long-term deterioration of a pavement that's not as stiff as other pavement types are, such as concrete.
And now, Jim, I lived in the Houston area for a long time, and a lot of concrete roads there, and it seems one of the main reasons is so much repetitive inundation. And my understanding is that after a flood, the asphalt roads can be damaged more by people getting right back on the road, whereas the concrete seems to be a little more resilient when the cars get back on the road. Is Houston a good example of that?
Houston is the example of that. You're absolutely right. Houston is a concrete city, and we've had several flood events. And it's the reason why is, and I need to go pavement geek on you for just a little bit, but the asphalt roadways, they're a flexible pavement. They're also called flexible.
All right, as promised, here on Weather Underground, the severe weather coverage is rapidly increasing now, and I think we're in that prime time. The next hour to maybe hour and a half, we're going to see pretty good coverage of severe weather in this kind of breadbasket of the country, right smack dab in the middle, eastern Oklahoma into western Arkansas, down through Texas and Louisiana, severe thunderstorms and potentially tornado warnings as well. Here's a look at the wide view of the radar, where suddenly big increase in severe storm coverage here in southern Oklahoma and north Texas, then stretching even close to the Shreveport area as well, at least the Shreveport National Weather Service area of jurisdiction. But I'm most concerned about these storms on either side of the Red River. We've got baseball-size hail potential with this storm in the Bryan County area. New warning has just gone up as well for the storm just north of there. All of these are rotating. These are all supercells. Feels very similar to where we were at this time on Wednesday. You had this lineup where each one of these down the row wound up rotating, and we wound up with tornado warnings. But look at the hail potential with this storm. Just east of Durant, we have hail aloft over 2 inches in diameter, baseball-size hail potential with that storm. Then you can jump and look at the rotation. Look at that big spin with that storm. Now, we're in the mid-levels here. We're pretty far from the radar site, but when you have that kind of strong rotation, you may have at least the potential to get that all the way down to the surface and get a tornado. We're also looking at the storm that's generally headed towards Paris. This is on the Texas side. This storm is also rotating. Look at that strong couplet that is now popping up. We've got a live view from this area, and I believe we've got a lowering there also. Hard to tell if that is rain that's going all the way down to the surface, or if that might be part of a circulation that's getting all the way down to the surface. But a very difficult to see, but you see that lowering right in there, and then it's kind of hazy and fuzzy in here. Is that just the function of the moisture, and this is all a rain shaft? A little bit hard to tell. Well, it's fuzzy, and we're far away from this area, but this is a storm tracker that has been following this zone. This side of it is definitely rain. The question is, in what was otherwise clear air in this zone, is whatever's going on in here potentially a funnel trying to drop down, and maybe a little bit of a circulation at times down near the ground. Honestly, you guys at home with your, a 60-inch HD monitor, if you're watching on this, might be able to see this better than I can on the monitors that I have in the studio. But there is something questionable here. It is in the perfect environment, and I think that, yes, this is a tornado in this area. So we are now seeing some signs that the National Weather Service may call this a confirmed tornado. Lightning flashes going across your screen right now, and just that kind of ominous lowering is in the exact right spot, coupled with that rotation that I just showed you. And again, a little bit of a glare. We're a little bit far away. They're zoomed in, and that kind of fuzziness is the only thing that is making me question, because sometimes that indicates more rain as opposed to a tornadic circulation. This is all rain shaft. We know, wow, look at that lightning bolt right where I drew the arrow. Whew, that was so that's an electrified storm, and you're looking at that rotation on the right side of your screen. We're about as far away from any of the radar sites as we can be. That's why the colors keep switching. So from the Dallas area, with the greens to the north going towards Dallas and the reds away, then from the Fort Smith area or Shreveport back towards the east, you've got that opposite rotation signature, but a strong rotation signature nonetheless for this storm that is in North Texas on either side of the river. So we're warned on all of these storms. Let's just go back to the traditional mode of the radar here. All three of these. This is the Texas side where I believe we may have a tornado. Then jumping to the Oklahoma side where we know we've had baseball size hail with this storm in Bryan County, and just north of there, a severe thunderstorm warning for Atoka until 7:30. All of these storms right through here, these are all supercells, so all 4 in a row are supercell thunderstorms. The view on your left is the southernmost storm on the Texas side, where we know there's a lot of hail. We know there's a lot of rain that's making it all the way down, of course, to the surface. But off in the distance there, I think we saw a bit of a lowering and potential tornado as well. So very difficult setup here with all these storms. And there's our tornado warning. This is what we were waiting for. National Weather Service watching the streams as well from the storm trackers in the area. So here is the latest information for you. Brand new tornado warning just issued for Lamar County. That goes until 7:45. Potential tornado here, not to mention large hail and very gusty winds.
Next on Weather Underground, we have extended coverage as dangerous storms threaten the south once again. We are breaking down the timing for you, pinpointing the locations that are at greater risk for you. These storms could have damaging winds, big hail, and even tornadoes.
And of course, we're also closely watching Florida for the second day in a row. We're going to show you where strong and potentially severe thunderstorms are battling portions of that state and when that threat can shift even farther south through the Sunshine State. Plus, it's another weekend and another weekend storm system to track. We'll show you who's in the bullseye for more heavy rain and rumbles of thunder all the way through Sunday.
And our countdown to hurricane season continues tonight. Hurricane expert Dr. Rick Knabb explains how and when evacuations are called. Important information you need, and it's next on Weather Underground. Thanks very much for staying with us tonight here on Weather Underground, with you for an extra hour to cover severe storms tonight. I'm meteorologist Mike Bettis, joined by our storm specialist Mark Elliott. Mark, you're all over this. New tornado warnings have been issued.
Yeah, you know, it's deja vu all over again. If people were watching on Wednesday, it was a triple point, meaning the intersection of the low, cold front or dry line, as Wednesday's case was. The warm front was there as well. And storms that followed along that warm front all started rotating again together. So this was Wednesday's storms in Medill, Oklahoma. Big tornadoes, potentially at least an EF2 here, preliminarily rated EF2. And now, in many of these same areas on either side of the Red River, we have tornado warnings again. So let's get into that setup. Here is that area of low pressure. There's our triple point right in here where all those different fronts and the area of low pressure meet up. And storms are going to follow along this front, a built-in wind shift right there. That's why we have the tornado watch basically along that warm front and points south. That goes until midnight. And within this area now, 3 different tornado warnings all lined up together. So let's take a little bit of a breather. Let's get into this. We'll go north to south to make sure that you stay safe as these storms are rolling along the Red River. This farthest one to the north has a history of huge hail. We're talking baseball-size hail. Now showing some pretty clear signs of rotation as well in Bryan County. This tornado warning goes until 7:45. Here's our rotation where the reds and greens are right next to each other. That's our counterclockwise spin. The best area of rotation is right in here. As for debris, there's a dropout there as well that we're not seeing all red in that area. So this may very well be a, hopefully just light leaf debris or something getting lofted off the trees, but potential tornado here. There is something spinning and there is debris of some kind that's non-meteorological in that same area. Again, the history of hail, big-time hail with that supercell. Sliding just barely off to the south. Now we're on the Texas side of things into Fannin and Lamar. You really got to know your counties here because there are 2 kind of overlapping supercells. These are both rotating. And again, in that spot of best rotation, there is a dropout on the correlation coefficient, suggesting that we may have a bit of debris being lofted into the air, even as we're pretty far away from this storm system. That's something that we need to watch. Here's a look at that, where that best rotation is, right in here. It matches up perfectly with the dropout on the correlation coefficient. And we also need to look just a little bit off towards the south and east through other portions of Lamar County, where we also have a tornado warning until 7:45. The rotation here is very strong depending on which Doppler radar site you're looking at. Again, we're pretty far from the different sites. So from the Dallas area, here's our rotation, basically right over the Howland area. And as for debris here, I think there's a dropout in this zone as well, right here. So gosh, all three of these have some sort of changeable view when you're looking at this. If this were all meteorological, if it was all very heavy rain with some hail mixed in, it would be all this kind of red color with a little bit of that kind of yellow to green. These are all in the right spot where the rotation is, suggesting some form of debris. So these are dangerous storms that are making their way on off towards the east. Let's time this out for you. Again, a little bit difficult because there's three of these. So let's go one at a time. Here's the southernmost storm that's near the Howland area right now. Will then come towards Atlas in about 5 to 10 minutes, cloudly by about 7:22, and getting towards Milton right about at 7:30. The storm that's in the middle, the third in the row, will be heading towards Selfs imminently, Sumner by 7:25, and getting towards Paris by about 7:30. And finally, that northern storm, which is quite strong and showing signs of a little bit of a donut hole even on this mode of the radar, towards New Oberlin by about 7:15 and Razor by 7:30. So very dangerous storms, the middle of which is the one that has a confirmed tornado on it, believe it or not. So that was the one that's kind of hardest to see on our radar sites. But this storm right here, again, that's portions of Lamar, has that tornado warning, Fannin and Lamar, tornado warning, and a confirmed tornado on this storm that's right in the middle of the three. I think all three of these may have tornadoes in progress. Please seek shelter, putting as many walls between you and the storm as possible. A new update on our northern storm as it is turning towards the right a bit. That warning for Bryan County. Notice the shape on this. Instead of going kind of this way, as some of the other warnings have been doing, it's now pointed like this. That storm has turned on its axis quite considerably. We can actually watch that happen. Let's look at the loop here. Here comes that storm dropping this way, and suddenly it's now going more south. And so that's an important component here. It's following along the warm front. Remember, that warm front is draped in this area. It's staying in the unstable air. It's staying in that zone of best rotation. And so another sign that this storm as well may very well be rotating. A very strong rotation couplet on all of these now. All three of these with a strong rotation signature. And if you look at the correlation coefficient, I think this is a scan behind. That could be debris, and we're probably going to see that jump on off towards the east as that new scan comes through. We were waiting for this very thing. Again, a tornado watch is in place across this very area until midnight. And the reason for that is that we have just the unfortunately perfect setup for the different winds with height through the atmosphere. Here are our surface winds coming up from the south, or maybe even a little bit southeast, but very strong winds aloft at about 5,000 feet up. So still the low levels of the environment, low enough that our storms at the surface can tap into that. Look at that different wind direction. Goodness, on either side of the Red River, then into northeast Texas, portions of Arkansas and northern Louisiana, they all have that shift. So now let's take a live look at some of these storms. This is on the Oklahoma side, I believe it is, and what we're seeing here in Twin Oaks, Oklahoma, is a bit of that front edge. We've got a shelf cloud approaching. You can see that the anvil up at the top left of your screen, and then you're looking kind of underneath that front edge of the gustiest winds back into the distance where there's all kinds of lightning, just a constant lightning threat across the Twin Oaks area of Oklahoma. And that's going to be part of the threat tonight as well. Just really heavy rain, huge hailstones. These are, these are supercells. They have rotating updrafts. That's going to support that huge hail aloft. And when these storms collapse, boy, does all that water crash back on down to the surface. Let's zoom out just a little bit so you can get your bearings here. We've got this line of storms that's all the way from the northeast side of Oklahoma down in towards McAllister. Then a little bit of a break, which makes sense because our area of low pressure is right about here. Warm front extending from that diagonally down all the way towards Shreveport. And these storms are riding along the warm front. And that's what's helping to give them that extra spin. And that's why we have 3 all lined up in a row, 3 different supercells, all with tornado warnings at this point. Going north to south for you one more time. On the Oklahoma side, we've got Bryan County tornado warning until 7:45. Just over the river, we've got a strong rotating signature for Fannin and Lamar, tornado warning also until 7:45, and a very strong signature here in the rest of Lamar County just south of Paris. That goes until 7:45. Sometimes this lower, we call it the tail end Charlie, the storm that's all on its own to the south that can tap into the rest of the environment off to the south without too much other storm kind of outflow getting in its way, really takes off. And when you look at that inflow, you can see a notch right in here. That's our inflow notch. The rain-cooled air will then wrap back around, and you wind up with this hook signature, and where the tornado sits is generally right in that intersection of the different wind directions. So you look at our rotation and it's right there. The reds, and in this case the yellows, right next to each other. A very strong signature of rotation on this southernmost storm. And then when you look at the potential for debris in this area, it also clearly matches up. This is a scary site just south of Paris. Pretty sure that there is a tornado that is ongoing somewhere just south of Paris, headed generally towards the Clarksville area. It may start to bend south more towards Bardstown or Bogota as opposed to staying towards Clarksville, especially with a strong rotation signature like we have. For any of these, if you're on either side of the Red River, get into your safe spot now. Underground shelter if you have one. If not, you're talking the lowest level of your building, the most interior room in that lowest level, putting as many walls between you and the storm as possible. Unfortunately, Mike, this was exactly what we were waiting for, a higher potential for severe weather, including tornadoes, exactly where all these storms have now blossomed in, and where you have several tornado warnings all in a row.
Right. We're going to stay on top of that. Mark, thanks so much for the update. Want to let people know that there is a severe weather risk that does go into the day tomorrow as well. A few areas of concern will be across the Tennessee Valley now. Nashville will be within that. Knoxville, Atlanta, potentially even a Charlotte and a Raleigh could be affected for the day on Saturday. So if you have plans to be outside, definitely keep a very close eye on the radar. That's a look at the future radar, and you can see from mid-morning on, we're going to have rain and storms hitting us here. And some of those storms could get very, very interesting as we go later in the day. Some of them could be severe. That would include East Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, in through the Carolinas, and then eventually spreading their way up through the Mid-Atlantic as well. Heavy rain could pour out of all of these storms, and that's why we think that flooding is going to be an ongoing concern for us through the Ohio Valley, especially, say, a Paducah, through Louisville, then up toward Columbus or Charleston, West Virginia. So, again, if you've got to be on the roadways, be extra careful, watch your speed, be careful of hydroplaning. All right, let's time this out for you then. Overnight Saturday and Sunday, watch how these storms then rotate their way up through the Mid-Atlantic. I-95 from D.C. to Baltimore, Philly, New York could be looking for storms on Sunday, middle of the day. And even overnight Sunday into Monday now, we're looking for storms to continue up through New England. Maybe pulling back on the severe aspect of it, but heavy rain could certainly be in play. And so could some snow, believe it or not. You see the blue on the map there with some higher elevation snow back in the forecast. Large area where we think a 1 to 2 inch rainfall is very possible. Some locations where 2 to 3, if not more, could be a problem. Illinois in particular right now, the models are hinting that could be a hot spot for some rain. And as we mentioned, the snow is going to happen at the higher elevations where you could see as much as 8 to 12 inches of snow. So a lot happening for us here as that entire system works its way up into the northeast. I believe we're going to go back to, real quick, I want to get you that forecast for us in Syracuse, that we've got a chilly weather coming in, temperatures only in the 40s for the weekend, but rain, not snow. The snow's going to stay farther north, and again, the higher elevations end up getting that snow. But typically this time of year, heavy or wet snow tends to melt relatively quickly as compared to what we would see in the wintertime. All right, now let's get back to storm specialist Mark Elliott. Got a line on those tornado warnings in the plains.
Yeah, tornado watch goes until midnight, but all 3 of the tornado warnings on either side of the Red River for southern Oklahoma and North Texas now have that observed tag on them, whether it's because of spotters in the area seeing tornadoes with these 3 different supercells, 1 on the Oklahoma side, 2 on the Texas side, or if they're using the technology to confirm that there is some sort of debris being lofted into the air. All 3 of these warnings now with a tornado in progress. Let's go north to south. We'll try to keep you as safe as possible tonight in case you or your loved ones are in these communities. We've got Bryan County on the Oklahoma side with a tornado warning that continues until 7:45. Here's a look at that rotation. A little bit hard to see from the vantage point that we're in, but very strong rotation in the mid-levels of the storm, and it appears that there may be some debris lofted into the mid-levels of the storm because in an area that should be all red because of heavy rain in the area, we're seeing a pretty distinct dropout with the yellows and greens, suggesting something that is not a raindrop or a hailstone in the sky. Number 2 in the row is on the Texas side, Fannin and Lamar. A tornado warning continues here, also till 7:45. You're getting the theme here. Here's our strong rotation couplet where the green colors are going towards the radar site and the red is away, so that is our counterclockwise spin. And in that area of best spin, we also have quite the dropout. We're at least the potential for some non-meteorological stuff up in the sky. We can hope that it is leaves as opposed to buildings, but we can't rule that out at this point. And finally, a very strong storm on the southern side of Lamar. In Paris, we actually have a live view for you. That is, I believe, the tornado that is going through the area. This has a very clear dropout on the correlation coefficient. So this is hitting something. This storm tracker is somewhere near Paris, probably on the south side of Paris and looking then back north towards Paris, near this tornado warned storm. Tornado warning goes until 7:45, and it is likely that there is a tornado kind of shrouded within some rain there. Tough to see. It may be with that area on the left side of your screen. That is the tornado, and the right side is all very heavy rain and hail. In either case, a likely tornado there in Lamar County. Welcome back to Weather Underground, where just barely moments ago, outside of Paris, Texas, storm trackers in the area providing us this view. What you're looking at here is the ragged wall cloud. This is all rain over here. That is not the tornado, but coming out of the center of that, you see how there's even another lowering. Tough to pick out at times because there's some tree cover. I think that's an important part of this story to keep in mind. There's a lot of tree cover in this part of North Texas, but right in here, you see that? That is probably a tornado, probably making it all the way to the ground. It is certainly a very low base for that wall cloud. Here's the rest of the storm, and then this is all rain, and so it's obscuring the view of the clouds. But you got the rain-free base here. There's our lowered wall cloud, and right in the center, you're seeing that potential for a tornado. Here is a look at the radar across the area. That is the storm we're watching, Lamar County, and we can now go back to our storm trackers in the area because that tornado warning continues until 7:45. There's a look at that wall cloud again, that lowered wall cloud, and potentially again right behind some trees. There may be a tornado there. So we've got our wall cloud that has dropped down from the rest of the base of the storm, and we are also looking at this kind of the center of that wall cloud for what could be at times a funnel. It's certainly a rotating wall cloud right in here. You can see just from this vantage point that that's our rotating wall cloud. Here's the rest of the base of the storm. At times, dropping from this have been funnels. I don't actually see one at the moment, so hopefully we can say that we don't have an active tornado at this very second, but things change quickly, and that may be a new funnel dropping down right in this portion of that lowered wall cloud. These things are so dynamic. They're fluid. They're always moving. They're always rotating and changing, and so moment to moment, the views can dramatically change. And, you know, from this vantage point, even if we don't see the cloud, the condensation funnel getting all the way down to the surface, we can't see the surface. There's trees in the way. There's a distance problem. And so the circulation may actually be all the way down to the ground, and we wouldn't be able to tell you from here. Using the Doppler radar system, we've seen what is likely debris being lofted into the air. And so we know that these have been active storms tonight. And this is a very, classic presentation of a supercell thunderstorm with that lowered wall cloud. It seems to be a little bit separated now from the rest of the storm. So that's not necessarily the best mode of getting tornadoes to form. What we do know is that we have these several supercells all in a row. I'll show you the radar on the right side of your screen. The northern storm is still on the Oklahoma side. That is Bryan County, and we know that there is strong rotation with that. That's actually crossing over the river right now, that green and red area that's right on top of the river, and currently no clear sign of debris from that storm. Now we go into the Texas side of things, getting closer to the storm that we're looking at. This for Fannin and Lamar, tornado warning continuing, strong rotation, basically where that yellow line and the red line are real close to each other west of Paris. So in Paris, you got to watch that storm carefully. It's headed in your direction, and a questionable kind of dropout zone that could be tornadic debris. And finally, this is the storm that we've been looking at just south of Paris, the rest of Lamar County, including Blossom, Paris, and Reno. This storm has had strong rotation. You see that on the southern side of this warning, where those yellows and greens are right next to each other, right here. So that has been the rotation. It has been very strong at times. Let me move this back just a little bit, and you can see just how strong that rotation was as it's bending not only to the east but also to the south, turning right off that forward motion, and now getting back to where we are at now. It's still strong, maybe not as put together as it was even a few moments ago. And right now, there's still at least a questionable dropout zone on the correlation coefficient, suggesting some debris. But look at where it was a few moments ago with that really clear dropout zone on the correlation coefficient. What the correlation coefficient is looking for is symmetrical objects, pixel to pixel, scan to scan, east to west, north to south, up and down and left to right. And when that happens, when it's all symmetrical, the Doppler radar says, okay, that's a raindrop or that's a hailstone, and it's pretty clear that we have meteorological stuff in the air. When it's not the same width left to right or up and down, pixel to pixel, that's because there's something else in the sky that's tumbling around. And think about, a shingle. 1 second it'll be longest left to right, and the next second it'll be longest north to south or up and down. That gives us the dropout on the correlation. They're not correlated in that way. So there was some sort of debris on the south side of Paris. Let's bring this back to where we're at now, and this might just be leftover debris falling out of the sky. And let's hope, because as we look in the left side of your screen again, there does not seem to be a tornado dropping down from that wall cloud. We have a very strong supercell with rotation and probably a rotating wall cloud at that, but no clear sign of a tornado at the moment. That said, these storms all have a history of producing tornadoes. So this is the same storm from a different view, even clearer view of that lowered wall cloud, and where we don't have any connection down to the surface. And let's hope it stays that way. Let's hope that tornado threat is at least momentarily ending. It's why it's so important to have spotters in the area, because if you were just using the radar, you'd say, oh man, very strong rotation just southeast of Bardstown, probably a tornado continuing. But spotters in the area talking to the National Weather Service are looking at this and saying, no, we can see the whole horizon. There is no tornado right now, but there could be one soon, so stay tuned tonight.
And thank you for being with us tonight right here on Weather Underground as we track severe weather for you, including Tornado warned storms in Texas. Taking a look at Port Texas here, where we've got a rotating wall cloud, and we've had numerous tornado warnings issued with these storms. Right now, you're taking a live look at Charles Peak's live camera, and you can see we've got it firmly focused on the area where a tornado would form, and at any moment one could form. We've seen, at least on the radar, indications that has happened, even debris being detected by the radar. Want to get right to storm specialist Mark Elliott. Mark, you've been watching these storms really closely. The radar and the live pictures that we're getting are matching up pretty well.
Yeah, and a strong rotation at times with all of these storms basically on either side of the Red River. It is part of a complex that actually stretches all the way into northern Oklahoma. Less rotation potential here. I stand corrected now, all the way into southern Missouri and the Springfield area, getting the same line of storms with severe winds and severe thunderstorm warnings being issued there. All kinds of constant lightning with that band to the north. To the south, though, we have a lot more spin in the environment, and that has helped to give us tornado potential here. Not only straight line wind potential, but also tornadic potential. Tornado watch continues across this area until midnight. In this area for Fannin and Lamar, one warning is currently covering two different supercells that both have rotation and potential tornadoes. One is right here, and one is right here. If you're in Paris, we got to really carefully monitor this storm that's just west from you. At times it has kind of eased up on that rotation. In fact, the one that's north of town, northwest of you, has a much better rotation couplet at this point, where the reds and greens are right next to each other. The one due west from town, not as well put together, at least as seen by this particular Doppler radar. That said, we can see if any debris is being lofted into the air, and it's that north one. That north one is more worrisome. So let's go back just a bit, and we'll, put this in a loop just a little, so you can see this storm approaching, and it may actually come towards the Paris area as well. It's dropping down towards the south and east. So let's put a little bit of a timer on that, so you can get an idea as to when this storm may be coming towards you in Paris, because I think it could very well drop in from the north side. This is not the storm that's giving you the rain and the lightning and the wind now. That one is also tornado potential. However, in Sumner, about 5-10 minutes from now, and Paris, just before the top of the hour, we could have a tornado headed your way, and it does appear that there is still some debris being lofted into the sky just south of the Red River and headed in this direction. Again, here's that rotation couplet where the reds and greens are right next to each other, and it corresponds very nicely to where we have the potential for some debris. Then we've been following this storm on the south side of Paris. This is Lamar County, where we have a tornado warning until 7:45. I think the best rotation is actually right here. You see how we have that little lack of rain, that donut hole? That is because we have very strong inflow air coming in this way and wrapping back around the storm, and so we actually have the rain kind of centrifuged around and not going right into the center. That's where the best rotation is, right where we have that little donut without much rain. And that's also where we have the potential for some debris, although it does not look to be as kind of dramatic a dropout. So hopefully this is just stuff that's still in the air from when we think there was debris earlier. In fact, earlier we had some video from this storm, this southernmost storm in the line. And if you look at this right here in the center of your screen, you can see that we've got a little notch coming down from that wall cloud, a little triangle, and then maybe some debris all the way down near that tree line. It's very tough to see from this vantage point, but right in here is that lowering. This is all the wall cloud in here, so we've got a lowering right in the center of that, and then potentially some debris, a debris cloud somewhere in here. There's also a lot of moisture in the air, and so that could be a little bit of just rain wrapping around our tornadic circulation. But I do think that there was something right in there, something being a tornado dropping down from that storm. It's a very dangerous air mass and atmosphere. A couple of different reasons for that right now as we look at the low-level winds. What a bullseye, right? For the winds and where these storms formed, right? We knew we had this little impulse rotating through, but as they interacted with those stronger winds just aloft, boom, they really took off. And so we wound up with these tornadic cells on either side of the Red River. This different wind component with height as well is also what is giving us our rotation. We know we have a warm front there that is enhancing the spin. We know that we have these different winds with height enhancing the spin. That is why that potential is still high for more tornadoes all the way through this evening into tonight. Tornado watch continues until midnight, and we'll give you live views right here on the Weather Channel.
Watching severe storms for you tonight, including tornado-warned storms. This is a live look at Pattonville, Texas, where we've had tornado warnings right along the Texas and Oklahoma state line. And past the trees, boy, you can get a pretty good view of a really ominous storm here from some of the storm trackers that are out there right now. Some of these storms have had these low-hanging, rotating wall clouds, and they just seem at any moment they could produce a tornado. We take you to DePort, Texas, where we've had hail, tons of lightning here. On this shot from Charles Peak, we were watching a low-hanging wall cloud here. But be careful, folks, if you're out and about this evening or you have plans to be careful of the heavy rain, the hail, and of course the lightning is going to be out there. Not to mention this area under a tornado watch for the next several hours. Storm specialist Mark Elliott has been all over it on the radar. What are you seeing right now, Mark?
Oh, man, this is a highly electrified line of storms that's dropping down through eastern Oklahoma and then ties to that same complex of storms that and also has a rotating environment in North Texas. Let me show you the Pattonville area right now, because this area is one of those under a tornado warning. Look at that lowered wall cloud. It looks like something out of sci-fi, right? That is a lowered base dropping down from the rest of this supercell thunderstorm. And if there's going to be a tornado, it is then a small component coming out of that wall cloud area right in there. And so we've got all this heavy rain, this dark color back towards the left side of your screen. That's all rain. This is our lowered wall cloud. And if you're going to have a tornado, it would be generally coming out of that rain-free base somewhere in that component of the storm. That really shows you the scale of these kinds of storms. They're huge supercells, and then you get these tornadoes that are generally a small component of them, and yet that's what does all the damage. That's what tears up life and property, and what we're spending so much time focusing in on right now. Even driving down the road, you can see the kind of the rotating component of that wall cloud. It is rotating kind of left to right, and circling around here, one big loop like that. And I don't see a tornado at the moment. That is the good news, but magnificent storm structure there and the potential for a tornado at just about any point. So this is the Pattonville, Texas area, several different tornado warnings all in a row. And honestly, if you are in Paris, you had a threat just miss you to the south. Now you have a threat incoming from the north, and because of the turning of these storms, we're actually seeing these kind of overlapping tornado warnings that'll make it a little bit more complicated. But the one that we're watching is this one right in here from the Red River and then diagonally south and east towards Paris. This one is important because it has a very strong couplet, a rotation couplet, where the green colors now are going off towards the north and east, towards that beam that you see sweeping across the screen, towards the radar site, red away. And so our counterclockwise spin is right in there. And if you're going to have a tornado, it's within that kind of spin zone. And that's also where we have a little bit of a dropout zone on the radar. So when you put all that together, and you continue that motion off towards the south and east, it means that Paris, first Sumner basically right now, and then Paris could have this tornado coming towards you just before the top of the hour, sometime between 7:50 and 8 o'clock. So you got 10 to 20 minutes before this storm arrives in the area. And again, there could still be some debris with this storm as it approaches. Then we've got this big storm that we've been following down towards the south, and a brand new tornado warning as we continue to follow that storm. This is now Franklin, Red River, and Titus counties. I was calling out many of these same counties for you this time on Wednesday because this is almost verbatim where the tornadic storms were 2 days ago. And again, it looks like we have the potential for a tornado. This is not being called a confirmed tornado because this is the storm that we're giving you the views of on the left side of your screen. And with views like this, we're relatively confident that there isn't a tornado at the moment. But when you have such a distinct lowering, a rotating wall cloud, you can get a tornado to drop out of that at just about any point. And using the technology, we know we have a very strong rotation center right about here, due west of the Talco area, right in here where the reds and greens are right next to each other. This storm is also dropping towards the east with a little bit of a southerly component. And the closer it gets to that warm front, I think the farther south it is going to bend to stay in that kind of warm and unstable side of the warm front. The rotation actually just got significantly stronger due west of Talco. Let's leave a circle on the map here where we have some of that rotation and then switch this over to the correlation coefficient. Again, looking for that potential dropout zone. Questionable. I think this may be a scan back. I am worried that as this approaches the Talco area that we may have a tornado trying to form again on that, the southwest side of the storm. So let's time out the worst of the rotation, basically on that southern third of the warning coming towards Talco, again, just before the top of the hour. So both Paris and Talco could be at play just before 8 o'clock local time. Maple Springs just after the top of the hour. Then if it holds together in this direction, Cookeville by about 8:30. Let's take one more look full screen for you at that view from our storm trackers who are on this very storm. They're looking at this storm, the southern storm in the mix near Pattonville, Texas. And as we pass by these trees, you will see that distinct lowered wall cloud is just off to the left side of your screen. You could see glimmers of that white cloud. That is the lowered wall cloud. Coming out of that at any point could be a new tornado headed generally towards the Talco area of North Texas. We're just a little bit south of the Red River. Dangerous storms tonight, continuing to move east with a little bit of a southerly component as well. Remember, Tornado Watch continues all the way until midnight. Keep it tuned here for these live views of the storms. And welcome back to Weather Underground as we are following some dangerous storms tonight in an area that was forecast to do exactly this, really ramp up as the sun is setting. Those low-level winds picking up as the sun sets, giving just enough spin in the atmosphere. A very electrified storm system from Springfield to just outside Fort Smith, where there's a little bit of an extra spin as well and a whole lot of lightning. So keep that in mind. Fort Smith, got to watch those storms carefully off to your west. However, stealing the show tonight are these storms just south of the Red River now on the Texas side of the Texas-Oklahoma border. Several supercell thunderstorms, many of which have produced likely tornadoes so far the past hour or so, and they've kind of been doing that ebb and flow thing. This one approaching Paris has collapsed considerably, and let's hope it stays that way because my goodness, it was making a beeline towards the town and now just north of town because that rotation has eased, and so the motion to the right of its forward progress has ended. So instead of continuing to curl south, it has now kind of flattened out just north of town. All of that is good news if you live in Paris. Maybe bad news if you're just north of town because you've got a strong storm on the north side. The rotation is much weaker now with that particular storm system and no longer showing any signs of debris. However, we can look at a very strong storm south and east of there. This is Franklin, Red River, and Titus counties. Tornado warning continues for you until 8:45. When you look at this mode of the radar, it just looks like a mess, right? Heavy rain for everybody, embedded hail in these pink colors. But there are some hints that there's a little bit of a rotation right in there. And so let's take a look at the motion of the raindrops. And it's a little bit blocked by the 271 placard. So let me move them the map around just a bit, give you a better view. Right in here, we've got that connection of the reds and greens right next to each other. This is also looking a little bit less potent as even just a couple of moments ago. Let's step this back just a little bit, and you can see just how strong that rotation was when you had the greens and the blues right here. And that, stepped forward a little bit closer to now, was still quite strong. And then this is the latest scan, so that's still our rotation. We know we have a rotating wall cloud here. There are spotters in the area that are giving us those reports and saying that there's not a tornado at the moment, but that there could be at just about any point. As for debris, none, because there's no tornado in this area at the moment. But again, a difficult setup when you know that you can have these storms kind of ebb and flow and change just how potent they are at just about any point across this zone. So again, I mentioned that area towards Fort Smith. Severe thunderstorm warnings all down this line. But even from here, you see that surge forward, and then almost like a comma head, it wraps back in. And so I want to take a little bit of a closer look on that storm just because Fort Smith is so close to this area. It's right along I-40, and through Salisaw, you've had that straight line winds, but right up here where it kind of wraps back in on itself, sometimes you can get little sneaky spin-up tornadoes on those types of signatures as well. And look at that, where the reds and greens are very close to each other right in here. That is a potential spot where you can get a spin-up tornado, not a supercell, like embedded within the line of these storms, and specifically on the north side of that bowing segment. So this is all straight line wind, and then you got to watch this area carefully. As for any debris being lofted into the sky in that area, nothing that's super clear. There's a little bit of what almost looks like a hail spike, which means that at some point there may have been something up in the sky there that's blocking the view of the radar off towards the north, but it doesn't appear to be a clear signature of debris, so that is good news. Let's go back to the setup tonight. Why we're seeing the storms where we are. It's because of a bit of a double-barreled low-pressure system. All kinds of storms fired off this top edge. That brought flooding to Wichita earlier today. Now those heavy rain-producing thunderstorms from Springfield, Missouri, all the way down to Fort Smith and southern portions of Oklahoma. However, along the river, you have a warm front, and that has added to the shifting winds, and we also have more instability available in those storms south of the warm front. And so you put all that together, and it is that southern component that keeps the potential for rotating storms and a tornado potential right on through the rest of the night. Tornado watch continues to, at least through the evening, I should say, until midnight. And again, we have those two different supercells that we're watching with a bunch of lightning as well. So here we're getting a little bit closer in. I want to bring you in towards Bogota, Texas. This is the southern storm, and quite the view here. It looks like a little bit of the whale's mouth, a turbulent sky there, where you're getting, you're underneath the supercell, and you're getting that turning over of the winds. And because of that, you're seeing that kind of odd shape to the clouds, that it looks like almost a wave on the ocean. That is a function of being in that turbulent atmosphere where even the air that's sinking down still has enough moisture and instability that the air that's coming down is also creating clouds, and so you get that kind of wave pattern. That is an area that is underneath a tornado warning that goes until 8:45. We know that there is a rotating wall cloud here, but thanks to spotters in the area, we also know that there's probably not a tornado yet. If you're in Talco, if you're in Bogota, if you're in Red River or Titus counties, this storm is still with you, and a tornado warning continues there until 8:45 because we know we could have a tornado pop at any point. The function of a setting sun and a very strong storm is giving us some really dark conditions here in Talco, Texas. Lightning there almost constantly with a very strong thunderstorm that is under a tornado warning at this point. We've seen this storm produce tornadoes. It does not appear to have one at the moment, but could kind of recycle to that at just about any point. There's a tornado watch that's in place across northeast Texas, southwest Arkansas into northwest Louisiana, goes until midnight. The main show within here is this complex of thunderstorms right down here. And we know that the worst of which is this southernmost storm where we had those views just a second ago. From Talco, Texas, well, my goodness, there is both a rain and a hail core crashing in towards Talco right now. There are some signs that this storm is trying to reorganize with a new area of rotation back towards the south end and west. Right in here, this area was the one we were following right over Talco. It is no longer producing any sort of imminent tornado threat, but let's loop this for you and you can follow that rotation coming in towards Talco. That one may be lifting off and a new area of rotation may be starting to form on the south side of that supercell. So if you're in Naples, if you're in Mount Pleasant, please watch this storm carefully. No clear sign of debris, although there is some very strong wind and some hail, and that is giving us those different colors on this correlation coefficient. Ray Sajak is in-house, and if there are big storms, he will break into coverage and keep you ahead of the storms.